Happy freaking Monday, degenerate gamblers. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I am your host, as always, on this joyous Monday, your boy Clint, and I am wearing the baby blues. We are rocking the Die Hard stimulus check t-shirt legitimately this week. Last week, I wore it ahead of time, claiming victory, and I fucked that whole thing up. But that's behind us now. That's in the rearview mirror. We profited at UFC 304, and I get people being like, "Oh my god, you won 2 units, dude. Shut up, please." Like, you guys don't understand. I'm breaking a 7-event losing streak here this week, okay? To break that streak and then it all to come down to Belal freaking Muhammad and for him to take out the current seeded champion, something that I called over a year ago. It's just I could twist my nipples. I'm so happy. It feels so good right now. I am so excited. I'm feeling good. We're starting to go in the right direction here. This is the beginning of something beautiful. Upwards from here, we're getting our shit together. We are locked in. We are locked in for the rest of 2024. How is everybody doing? Welcome, UFC Shell. We got my guy Mushroom Bufo on the beat. Devesh saying, remember the name. That's what's up. We got Sports Fanatic Gibbs. Iceland Farts, which I am 99% certain is a new name. Welcome to the show, Cameron 13, the It Factor MMA, Moneyline Mills in the house, Glenbot 5000. What's up, everybody? What is going on? I see Ryan, I see Whoa, I see, let's see, Auto and Dream. We've got everybody already. Do me a favor, guys. Lucky Dog MMA. Hit the like button if you haven't yet. Share the show out on social media. You're going to want to because, frankly, I think this card might be better than last week's card. As far as an action element is concerned, this bad boy is looking violent, and I like this betting card. I made a couple mistakes last week, parlaying up Molly McCann. We all did it. Don't make fun of me. Don't mock me for parlaying Molly McCann. You did it too. We all went down on the same damn ship together. It doesn't matter. I like this card bouncing back. We're going to keep it going. We're going to start a win streak. And you know what? The most important win of a win streak is the first one, because without that first win, you can't get on a streak in the first place. To help us in that effort, I've brought back one of my absolute favorites, one of the best cappers in the game, one of the best minds in the game, and just an all-around good person and a fun guy to talk to about fights. You've got none other than Liam Picks Fights joining us on the show today. Liam, my man, how you doing?
My brother from another. How are you, Clint? It's good to be back. And I can speak to your point from the intro right now. I've been on a little bit of a rough run. I'm having a great year so far, but honestly, just like the last 4 or 5 weeks, haven't been dialed, haven't been my best work. And so I'm eager to get back to work this week, and I'm excited to do your program. A little kick in the ass to get going on our research early this week. So let's kill it. Let's crush the books in Abu Dhabi, and I'm excited to do it with you, my brother.
Yes, sir. You love to see it. Hey, I always start out the show with how you did last week. You already kind of touched on that. Been a bit of a rough skid here for you, but I got to tell you, man, the two of us joining forces, coming out of a rough patch. That's what it's all about. I think we're gonna steer some people on the right track this week. And one of the main reasons I like chatting with you, Liam, is you are process over results. And I try to be that way. And not many people are, especially not people on the internet. Most of these people, you give picks out, and if the pick loses, it doesn't matter if you put, 10 hours of blood, sweat, and tears into it. It just didn't go your way. Your guy broke his toe in the first round. It didn't win. And that's all that matters. So I like that we align that way. And I think the processes are doing okay. And the results just aren't quite catching up. So we'll get there. It'll turn. We're about to make some cash this weekend, man, and I love it. First fight of the evening, we have Sedriques Dumas taking on Denis Tiuliulin, and you guys may recognize this fight because it was booked just about a month ago. Tiuliulin had a matchup. It fell apart. My boy Sedriques Dumas, well, not my boy, but you know what I'm saying. He filled in on short notice. It was going to be like a 1 week short notice, flying halfway around the world, and man, Liam, I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off because they opened at minus 250. I jumped in at minus 145. And as soon as I touched that number, it skyrocketed back the other direction. He went all the way back up to like minus 215, minus 220, I want to say. And it is not having the same type of move this week. Ain't that a bitch? Like, that's always how it works. If you just crush a line move, if you just smash a bookie, they get smart and they don't make the same mistake twice. It's really frustrating because I make the same mistakes over and over again and donate. So it would be nice if they would return the favor sometimes. But Dumas is not going anywhere near minus 145 this week. He is sitting stuck, anchored right around minus 215, minus 220. But we kind of already broke this fight down a couple of weeks ago. We don't need to spend a ton of time on it. Dumas is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. Tiuliulin, 11-9 overall, 1-4 in his UFC run. And his only UFC win is Jamie Pickett. And frankly, he got fouled massively in that fight. That was the one where, we all poured one out for Jamie Pickett's dick. Like, he was absolutely crushed in the cage that evening. Even if he did have a chance to win that fight, he was heavily compromised. It just wasn't going to happen. Tiuliulin has absolutely zero ground game, and while Sedriques Dumas is, naturally speaking, kind of a street fighter, kickboxer, lanky, rangy type of guy, he has shown he's got a little bit of grappling chops. He's got a good body lock, a big frame. He's strong, kind of rips people down to the ground. I like Dumas in this fight, man. Everybody knows my blind bet strategy of bet Dumas equals profit. I'm telling you guys, long-term, it's going to work. He might not be the best fighter you've ever seen, maybe not a great representation for the sport of MMA, but he's kind of a bit of a freak athlete, and I think he's going to win a lot of these mid to low level tier matchups. I like him in this spot, Liam. I don't see any problem with him. I liked him at minus 250 the first time around. I loved him at minus 145. But I think he wins this fight, and I don't mind throwing him in a little bit of a parlay, especially now that he's had a month to prepare for this opponent, and he's not redlining his way to Abu Dhabi. He's able to get there and hang out and, acclimate if he wants to, and he's actually watched some tape on his opponent. So I like Dumas this week, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, if I had to briefly steelman the case for Tiuliulin, I think the crowd will probably be behind him here. Russian adjacent fighters tend to get the bump over in Abu Dhabi. I think that when you're looking at, what he brings to the table, he's got some power in his hands. Obviously, we've seen Dumas get stopped with strikes. 1-1 is his record as a favorite so far in the UFC. But, that's the steel manning ending right there, because there's not really much positive you could say about Denis Tiuliulin. Terrible record in the UFC, one win that doesn't matter, a bunch of losses that indicate he's not really of the level. He gets finished virtually every time out. When he gets put on the mat, he looks like a disaster. And I think that Dumas, in some of these fights that he's lost, considering the Fremd fight, for example, probably had a grappling disadvantage. In this fight, likely had a grappling advantage, or at least parity. And I think that on the feet, he's the longer guy. He hits a little bit harder than Tiuliulin, though that's Tiuliulin's only positive attribute. He's still not that good at it. So I think that as far as the fight goes, I lean towards Dumas getting it done, and probably getting it done inside the distance. But he has had fights where, he's been frustratingly passive sometimes from control position. So, maybe don't get cute, but yeah, I think he's going to win this fight.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. And to answer Lucky Day MMA in the chat, how does Dumas win? Frankly, I think he can do any of the above, man. Like, he's got that stupid strength, kind of like we saw with Bukauskas this last week, where Liam, I was all over Bukauskas KO, TKO, DQ. I was this close to playing Modestas Bukauskas round 3. Decided I liked KO a little bit better, because when is he ever going to sub the guy, right? Like,
Clint, can I tell you how disgusted I am with myself? I said all week, you can go back and re-listen to my programs. I said all week, I was like, if I made one bet on this fight, it would be Bukauskas round 3. I was like, the only thing know for sure is that Prachnau is going to gas in round 3 and just be a complete disaster, phone it in. I was like, is Petrino good at jiu-jitsu? No, this guy collapsed. He gave it up, which is exactly what happened again. Guys, Modestas Bukauskas, don't go thinking now, Modestas, his ground game is so sick. The next guy he tries that shit against is not going to work. Thank you to Marcin Prachnau for being predictable. Thank you to me for being an idiot and not taking it. That's my goal this week, Clint, is when I say it, follow up. That's it. If I get it wrong, then I live with the results. But when I'm passing on some of these really good reads I've had, that's frustrating. It was literally in my document, one of the only things that I wrote down, like, Bukauskas round 2, round 3, didn't follow through. So lesson from that, follow your gut instinct.
Yep. I am right there with you, man. I am right there with you. And that's where I was trying to simplify things, and I went, round 3 is the move. But he was coming in with kind of a chip on his shoulder, wanted to get a big finish. So I'm like, the way he's going to come after this guy, he could knock him out sooner this time. Like, it's usually round 3. This time might be round 1 or 2 for the first time in his life. And the way that fight went down, I'm actually happy with my decision. It just sucks that the round 3 is the one that came through instead of the KO bet that I made. Anyway, so, turning back to this card this week here. Yeah, man, I like it. I think that Dumas can get a sub on the ground just by, big bully squeeze if he really wants to. And I've been saying it, this guy's going to start knocking people out. He's acclimating to the UFC level. He's tall, he's rangy, he's got that nasty head kick that he really likes. And when you get an opponent that's going to stand in front of him and throw down a guy like a Denis Tiuliulin, it's going to really let Dumas kind of use the weapons that he got to the UFC on. I do think a finish is available to him. And then if he gets tired and he body locks and drags this guy to the ground, he absolutely could win a decision as well. And that's why we can't really count that out as far as a method of victory, and kind of why I like the parlay piece rather than getting too fancy on some kind of a prop. Shout out Dust here. He does say that, my guy Mills, if you guys know Mills from Pub Sports Radio, he always has Dumas come on his show. So if you want to check that out, get an interview. I think Mills is pretty much the only guy that gets to talk to Dumas. So if you want a little peek into what he's thinking, he said he's coming for that 50K. I like to hear that, Liam. I think this is a very finishable opponent. I do think it's Dumas inside the distance. But, like I said, money line I'm fine with too.
Yeah, my final note here is very brief. It's just to say I bet Dumas by sub plus 850 against Cody Brundage, and I thought that was a great bet. Now it's all the way down at plus 300. I do prefer the ITD at plus money in that regard, just because Tiuliulin has been finished with strikes many, many times. So it's almost like a preference thing from Dumas. And at 3-1, take the plus money. In my humble opinion, don't get cute. Would be my approach here if I was going for the inside the distance angle.
Couldn't agree more. Don't get cute sometimes is the way to go. All right, guys, moving on to a new fight here for you. Jai Herbert, the backcountry banger, that's a mouthful, takes on Rolando Bedoya. And I love this fight, Liam. I love it so much because it's really a crossroads fight for both guys. Jai Herbert, 12-5-1 overall, 2-4-1 in the UFC. Not a really great run. 36 years old. This is worse Leon Edwards. I mean, like the way he fights in his style, it's like the exact same thing, right? Rolando Bedoya, 14-3. He's got an 0-2 start to the UFC. Kind of. I will fully admit, as a guy who had a Chaos Williams ticket in his pocket, I think Rolando Bedoya beat Chaos that night. I feel like the judge's decision could have gone, or maybe should have gone, to Rolando Bedoya that night. So I think he probably should be 1-1. And frankly, with what we've seen from Chaos, that is no small feat to be potentially owed a victory over a man of that caliber. That says something. And he's 27 years old. On top of that, Liam, it looks like Rolando Bedoya is dropping a weight class here. When you saw him fight a guy like Chaos Williams, he kind of had that Kelvin Gastelum thing going about him, right? Like he didn't really drain himself. He was a little pudgy, got a little extra around the midsection. And that doesn't really help in the sport of mixed martial arts. There ain't no pudge. This man is rocking abs. If you guys check out his Instagram, he is in crazy good shape. This move down to 135, I think, is going to be an excellent decision for Rolando Bedoya. He's going to be much stronger. His strikes will have a whole lot more effect, a lot more pop on them. And I think it's going to be an advantage for him, especially against a tall, lanky guy like a Jai Herbert. Bedoya is a shoot the box guy. He can eat 100 or more significant strikes and then smile at you through bloody teeth like he's that kind of a psychopath. I love it. Fast hands, strikes and combos almost consistently, just constant aggression, lots and lots of leg kicks. He does a good job of mixing in takedowns. He tries to trip and dump people, and that didn't work out too well for him up at 170. But again, like I said, the size and the strength, I think at 155, a la Jillian Robertson, he'll have a little bit more success with those kinds of trips and dumps, and he'll find his way on top of people instead of not being able to get anybody to the ground. He's also training with Brener, who's going to be on the same card. We'll talk about him just a little bit later. I've never really liked Jai Herbert, or at least I have to, correct that just a little bit. I actually was really high on Jai Herbert when he first made it to the UFC, Liam, and I lost a bag in his UFC debut. He absolutely dominated for 12 minutes of the fight and then just got banked right on the top of his head. And it reminds me of Johnny Walker, the way this guy loses control of his body and flops and flails after he gets cracked. I don't think he's got a great chin. He's hittable. His wins in the UFC are Kyle Nelson and Kama worthy. While the Kyle Nelson win actually looks like it's aging pretty well at this point, I'm still not 1,000% sold on the success of Kyle Nelson these days.
And it's also been at featherweight, in fairness, right? At lightweight, it's a different story.
Exactly. So Jai Herbert's on my fade list, man. He's been on my fade list since he cost me a pile in his UFC debut. And I think this is a perfect spot where we can kind of flip the script. Jai is a minus 165 favorite. Rolando Bedoya is a plus 140 dog. And I'm looking at this and going, Jai hasn't had a whole lot of success. I don't think he's, really deserving of being a favorite over almost anybody. And even though Bedoya is 0-2 on his record, the truth is he should be 1-1. I like this kid. I think there's a lot of upside. I like his volume. I like his pressure. I like his pace. I think Jai's going to struggle with that. And then, frankly, I think we might see the chin issues kind of rear their ugly head with Jai Herbert in this kind of a spot where this kid just refuses to let up and makes him go backwards for however long it takes to get him uncomfortable. I like Bedoya in this spot. I think we got a live dog, and I'm probably going to take the shot.
You know what? I tend to agree with you, Clint. I'll read you right directly from the Patreon community chat. Bedoya cutting from 170 to 155. I think that's good for him. It's just like a very simple declaration, but Kenan Song, he's a 170-pound guy. He's pretty big. Chaos Williams, I mean, nobody wants to get in there with Chaos Williams, right? He puts people in a box. That guy too. And then when I look at how this stacks up, I'm like, okay, you got a Rolando Bedoya who's kind of fighting for his job and his career at this point as a young man who's put a lot into this. And Jai Herbert on the other side, he's getting to the back half of his career in the best of scenarios. He's a guy who's cutting, I would think, a decent amount of weight. He's a guy that's 36 years of age, like you mentioned, in a weight class, doesn't tend to be forgiving as you get a little bit older. And unless you're on the star circuit, right, then you're going to have to fight these young up-and-coming guys who are really hungry and really need the wins, and Rolando Bedoya fits that category. You look, I think a lot of people in the chat kind of nailed this one, where you talk about, recency bias. He comes in, and there's an old expression my wrestling coach used to use, which is there's no such thing as a good loss, right? Mm-hmm. Which meant, like, don't go out there and celebrate the fact, hey, I got beat, but it wasn't as bad as you thought, or, it's close, but it's kind of the idea where, all right, Rolando Bedoya was a huge underdog. Nobody knows who he is. He comes in and he gets this, good performance against Chaos Williams, but he ultimately loses the fight, close fight. And then everybody says to themselves, because of this loss, he is the GOAT. He is minus 400. He should be, this anchor piece of all of our parlays. And then he shits the bed. So now he's back to being a worthless piece of shit that nobody knows, right? And it's just the cycle of MMA, right? If you have a good performance, you're back in our good graces. You have a bad performance, we hate you. And I think that it's the kind of spot where Bedoya is probably a little down right now in terms of stock. Jai Herbert's fought good guys, right? You can't even discredit the losses. Hey, you get knocked out by Ilia Topuria. What do you really put on that? Hey, you got knocked out by a pound-for-pound guy. But you also have to say, he's getting knocked out by featherweights. He's getting knocked out by the very heavy-handed Reese McKee in the first round. You just start to look back at the record and go, Jai Herbert, kind of lucky to be here in some ways as well. Even Trinaldo, powerful guy. Is he the most powerful guy you've ever seen at this age, at this stage of the game? And put him in the box so bad that Dan Hardy lost his job. So, I think Bedoya is probably the side here.
Yeah. All right, man. Glad we agree. That will be a play that I'm making this week. And I got to tell you guys, I know coming off a 2-unit win, I shouldn't be brimming with confidence, but I am. I'm feeling myself. I think I'm going to have probably a unadvisable amount of bets this week, or at least an unadvisable amount of money invested, because I really like this card, Liam. I think Bedoya is the side. I think the plus money is a gift. That's going to be a bet that I'm making as soon as we are off the show. All right, guys. Next up, we have got Jai. That's not right. We just talked about that one, Liam. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm getting behind myself.
Hey, we'll run it back. We'll talk about it again. So nice. Exactly. We did it twice.
Circle it. Circle the wagon. No, even better. It's Sam Page season, baby. Victoria Dudakova takes on Sam Page Hughes. And you guys know I love me some Sam Page. That's my girl. I love me a mangy underdog that everybody counts out and will break somebody just based off of hard work and constant pressure. That's what it's all about here, Liam. I used to tell people, I'm a football fan. Obviously, I got Victor Viking sitting here behind me. I'm a Vikings fan. Adam Thielen was always my favorite player on the Minnesota Vikings. Why? Because he was not the most skilled. He was not the best guy on the team. Hell, he didn't even get me the most fantasy points in my fantasy football league. It was because he was a guy that made it to the NFL because he was not the most athletic. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the most explosive. He couldn't jump the highest, but he worked harder than everybody. He got out there and he was good enough and he used his brain and he outthought people. He ran clean routes and he realized if I go here right when you move there, I'm going to be open. And that's how he's made a freaking career in the NFL, not being the most athletic guy, is because he's a hard worker and uses his head. And that's why I fall in love with fighters like Sam Hughes, is because it's the same thing. She is low on the athletic totem pole. She doesn't have a whole lot of physical gifts from people, but she refuses to quit. She's tougher than an old leather boot, and she will keep on coming forward and eating your punches for the opportunity to break you. And she's done that multiple times in the UFC. Frankly, this girl's handed out a couple of fraud checks, guys, and I love it. And Liam, the biggest thing that's confusing to me here in this fight is why ain't this number higher? I really expected to come in here and already have a locked and loaded Sam Hughes bet because I'd be getting plus 190. I'd be getting plus 200. Victoria Dudakova is undefeated. She's nothing but stellar so far in her UFC run. People are hyped on her 2-0 off of Dana White's Contender Series. She's only minus 180 in this spot. And that smells a little funny to me. Especially against the 32-year-old 8-6 Sam Hughes, where frankly, as far as bets are concerned, I'm the one waving the flag. I'm the commander here. I'm the one running the train. So I'm kind of confused why this number is so low. It almost feels trappy to me, frankly. You know, Dudakova, 25 years old, great frame for the weight class, good blitz attacks, good grappling. Looks like she's really working on her overall skill set. And it's funny, I ran back. I was looking for a couple of notes and I went back and you and I talked about Dudakova's last fight. You were actually on the podcast and we talked about the Jin Yu Frey fight together. The biggest point for me in that fight was Jin Yu Frey can beat this girl if she'll grapple for more than one round. And we both know that that's always been the Achilles heel of Jin Yu Frey. She refuses to stick to a game plan. She grappled for one round, Liam. Round two, she got 3 minutes and 40 seconds of control time. Dudakova did not know which way was up. She couldn't do a damn thing to get off of her back. And Jin Yu Frey won that round. It was 1-1 going into round three. And then she didn't do a damn thing. Lost a 29-28 decision, as Jin Yu Frey is one to do. If Sam Hughes comes out here and strikes with this girl and takes her down the way we've seen her do in the past, where she gets them a little tired, a little worn down, and then pours it on in rounds 2 and 3, I don't think she'll make the same mistake that Jin Yu Frey did. I think she'll stick to a game plan and she'll come out and do the same damn thing in round 3 that worked in round 2. Now, we've seen Sam Hughes is not the athlete, like I mentioned before, that some of these other fighters are. She does not necessarily have the same gifts that some of these fighters do, but it's that constant grind that she'll just wear people down. I think if she makes this a nasty, greasy brawl, she's live, Liam. I have not pulled the trigger yet because, like I said, I kind of wanted a bigger number. I'm expecting money to come in on Dudakova. I think she's the blind checkbox parlay piece of the week at minus 180, and that number is going to grow. So for me, it's going to end up being dog or pass. But I think this is a very close, grimy women's MMA fight where Sam Hughes is very, very live coming into this thing, especially if she can get it to where it's 1-1 going into 3. I kind of expect Sam Hughes to win round 3.
This is a weird one for me, Clint. I'm definitely going to have to do more tape on this fight. These aren't two women that I'm like, I got a great opinion on these women. I have it all figured out here. As for the Dudakova side, I don't know that I've ever been involved with one of her fights. I don't know exactly how to rate her wins, right? The Estela Nunes win, I throw it out of the sample. Don't really take anything from it. It was a very short fight. It ended via injury. We've seen how, those fights can be reversed, right? With Curtis Blades and Tom Aspinall over the weekend. A lot can change quickly. But then when you look at the Jin Yu Frey fight as well, that's not a really impressive performance to me. Jin Yu Frey, with all due respect, very undersized for the division, was coming off of 3 straight losses going into that contest. And she got knocked out brutally in the first round by Polyana Viana. She got decision by Vanessa Demopoulos. That was kind of a robbery, but I was there for it. Don't fade a stripper in Vegas. That's a lesson you guys will learn 50 times in a row before you believe me. And then Elise Reed.
I fell for it, Liam. I did not believe. I'll never make that mistake again.
My man, that is one of my greatest betting angles that I've ever discovered. Never fade a stripper in Las Vegas. Vanessa Demopoulos, like plus 200 and above. It's just a money printing machine.
It just works.
I think that's how the gangs are washing money these days. But in any case, when I'm looking at, the last time she had a cancellation as well, Dudakova had a medical issue. She had a medical issue in a fight where that was kind of her excuse for why things went sideways. So, a fight where I want to see her make it to the scale, be healthy, all those things, because like you said, it's a matter of what could go wrong at minus 190. I don't know. I mean, a million things with this girl so far, just from what we've seen. Couldn't make it to one of the fights, had some medical issues for another fight. So we've just seen that she's had some problems. As for Sam Hughes, like you mentioned, when you're looking for underdogs, you're often looking for somebody who's going to go out there and fight hard for your money. I think Sam Hughes has shown she'll do that. I've talked about before. What is a betting angle you could try and exploit? Hey, how about this? People that will cheat. Right. And you can love it. You can hate it. You can think it's scummy. Sam Hughes will fucking cheat her ass off. She'll grab under the glove. She'll try and pull that shit off. Jacqueline Amarine's about to choke her. She's like, forget all that. I'm going finger interlock, whatever it takes. And so, again, you could love it or hate it. But when it's about money, when it's about who's going to get me across the finish line, the person that's willing to cheat to win is more often than not going to win. When's the last time you saw a rule enforced in mixed martial arts, guys? I mean, be serious. God. Like, it's the most comical sport in the world. So when you're capping it, if somebody's committing a lot of fouls on tape, that's not necessarily a bad thing. As long as you see that they have some cognizant awareness, hey, maybe now is the time to pull back on the foul so I don't actually lose a point. But if they're doing it within the rules, like, hey, poke you one time in the eye, get a breather, kick you in the nuts, whatever it takes. I mean, it's scummy, but it's people fighting for money, and they're going to do it. And you could see it if you watch enough tape. So
I mean,
weird fight for me. I don't have the strongest thoughts, but I guess I would just say it's dog or pass based on the level of fight, right? Sam Hughes had a bunch of UFC level fights. She's survived really dangerous women in good positions on top of her. And when you look at Dudakova, I just don't know that I'm convinced she's got great finishing instincts. So she's probably got to go out there, fight a good 15 minutes against somebody that's going to resist hard the whole time, and probably fighting for a job here as well. Sam Hughes, based on the recent layoffs, it's like, hey, you lost a fight. Goodbye. Hey, you didn't look great in that win. See ya.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I hope she's not on the chopping block, man, because as far as women's MMA goes, honestly, Sam's one of the more fun people to watch. She's always in a scrap. She always makes it a fun fight, and she finishes people sometimes too. I love her submission defense. I know that's something people have kind of talked about. The one time she was submitted was none other than I think your girl in Vegas in round 4 before she got to the UFC. So it was past the 15-minute mark. She got caught in a reverse triangle of all things. So like Sam Hughes' submission defense checks out. And frankly, Dudakova, like you mentioned, I'm not overly impressed with the finishing instincts to this point. Now she's young. She's 25 years old. She's going to be improving. She's going to be getting better. But I've seen her at this level so far end up in bad positions grappling more than good positions, man. She's been stuffed on more than one occasion, it's shooting in for a takedown and then ending up being in trouble herself. So yeah, man, it's dog or pass for me. I'm going to wait and see. We'll see what this number does. Cause if Sam gets to a playable plus money number, I will jump in on that side. All evidence to the way UFC match makes things, they're going to try and get Dudakova in a spot where she can get some fight time and learn and then move forward in her career. So maybe Dudakova by decision is like the low hanging fruit. That's probably the most likely thing to happen. Pepe's reading my mind over here though. Can Sampage get a sub in round 3? And that's what I would be looking at, because frankly, you guys know me. My angle on subs is target the tired fighter, right? Dudakova's not going to get TKO'd by Sam Hughes. Even if she's exhausted by the 3rd round in this fight, she's just too tough. She's not going anywhere. So I do think Sam would have to grab a neck for that to work. I would be looking at, yeah, exactly, Champette, Sam Page via drowning if it was going to happen.
I will just remind folks that she posted up in the mount and just beat the absolute tar out of Elise Reed. So I would look at the round 3 potentially as the angle if the cardio is like a concern. Because I do think that she is one of the, like, if you ask me what would her preference be, she's a violent woman, bro. She's going to try and hurt somebody. But I do think that maybe Dudakova would say self-preservation. Let me turn over and do the Macarena until she gets me out of here with the rear naked choke. But I'm saying I just wouldn't be surprised if Sam Hughes, if she gets the opportunity, is doing a whole lot of donkey punching and looking for the win.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I completely agree with you, actually. I do think Sam likes to get TKO. She likes to work with her hands. She likes to work with her elbows. But I'm saying I think Dudakova will survive that cover and then would rather give up her neck than get out of there with a TKO. And like you said, man, with the state of MMA these days, I don't know who's saving her, right? Like, are we going to get a stoppage for anything today? So probably sub over TKO. Maybe round 3 is just the safe way to go. Sprinkle, just a little sprinkle, definitely would love it. But yeah, my grandpa always used to say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So Sam Hughes will do what it takes. She's a dog that will fight for your dollar. And that, for sports betting especially, is something that I love to target, is when you've got a dog that is not just going to fold up and go home. Sam's taken a beating in there before. She will fight for your money. She wants that win if it costs her everything. So definitely something that I'm okay with putting my hard-earned dollars on. All right, guys, this is UFC Abu Dhabi. We're on the home of fights. Subscribe, please, if you haven't yet. This is my boy Liam Picks Fights. Make sure you support him, one of the best guys in the breakdown game that I know. Always love listening to him, always does his due diligence, and brings multiple shows a week to you guys with lots of great information. So make sure you're checking him out. Make sure you're supporting him. And, of course, check out Bet Openly. We'll talk about that more in a little bit, but you're going to get better numbers on absolutely everything you bet using that platform. So make sure you check it out. Next thing is Guram Kutateladze, and he's taking on UFC newcomer Jordan Vucenic. Think that's how you say that. Vucenic. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly here, Liam, but interesting spot here because the Cage Warriors boys have fallen on tough times a little bit, haven't they? I mean, Patty the Batty out here doing the damn thing, but everybody else, I'm upset with myself, Liam. If we can just rewind to last week one more time, I've got to lament myself here because I've always said I don't like Colin Lawford. He's a little tank of a man, and I'm just not impressed. He's got all the hype in the world, but I just don't see it. Maybe he's got some upside, but I think he's more physicality than anything. And if that is short, he's not gonna succeed because the skill deficit. And I said that in last week's fight, and I thought, you know what? Maybe this is a spot where Hadley is a little bit live. The face-offs literally scared me off. I don't know if the weight cut caused Hadley's spine to shrink and contract because he looked so much bigger on fight day than he did at the weigh-ins. And I thought the size and strength advantage for Colin Lawford was going to make the difference. He was going to put Jake Hadley on his back, on his ass, grind him out. He couldn't even get a damn takedown. And so I missed a beautiful opportunity to fade the Cage Warriors boys yet again, because when they first make it to the UFC, it just seems like, man, the days of Conor McGregor are gone. They just don't got it yet. Like, it takes a couple of fights for them to acclimate to the UFC level and then really get rolling. They're getting brought in just a little too early. Jordan is 13-2, so he's got a lot of experience. Maybe he's not that, right? Maybe he's the guy that's got enough experience and he's ready for the UFC jump. He's 28 years old, but he's coming in on really short notice. And more often than not, this guy's a 145er. He's got a 159-pound catch weight for his last fight that he ran, but he's coming in here at 155 against the Georgian warrior Guram Kutateladze on a week's notice. That's not something that spells success to me, Liam. And I know my guy Guram Kutateladze has fallen on tough times. He's 1-2 in the UFC. 2 of those fights went to a split decision, but he's facing some really stiff competition so far in the UFC, and he got Brener. This guy had Brener dead to rights more than once. And we have now learned that Brener is a guy that you just cannot get out of that octagon. And if you make yourself too tired trying to get him out of the octagon, he will kill you. He will turn the tables and he will come back and he will make sure that he gets his hand raised in the end. So you've got to have some high fight IQ to survive a 15-minute fight with Elvis Brener. And Guram emptied the tank trying to get this guy out of there and then just got hit on the button. So really interesting spot where Guram went from being the biggest favorite on the card, minus 600. Now he's a minus 200 to a UFC debutant who's making his debut up a weight class. I know Jordan's a slick grappler. He's a little reckless. He swings big. He plays with his hands down. I mean, he's got fast hands. Don't get me wrong. Lightning quick jab. But I believe he's a BJJ brown belt. So as far as I'm concerned, man, Guram has this guy checked essentially everywhere except for youth. He's bigger. He's more experienced. He's battle tested. I believe he's a black belt. Guram is the kind of guy that I want in this spot. And again, I think the recency bias is kind of keeping this number low, combined with the hype on Jordan making his UFC debut. So for me, even with the 1-2 run and coming off a KO loss, it's Guram.
Clint, I think we've agreed across the board so far, and this is going to be our first point of disagreement. And I got to say, this is another one where I'm going to have to do more tape, more due diligence, right? But here's the things that I like. Number one, I don't think anybody knows who Jordan Vucenic is. And, he's coming into this fight with a similar amount of fights as Guram. But what's different is Guram has a lot of name recognition. People know who he is. He's been in a lot of big fights, fun fights, crazy action affairs. But the God's honest truth is he should be 0-3 in the UFC. Like if you just look back at the results, he beat Mateusz Gamrot. It was a very controversial decision. He said afterwards, brother, I'm sorry. I robbed you fucking blind. Like, my bad. Then you look, there's nothing he could do, right? He's not the judge. They gave it to the wrong guy. They both acknowledged it. Hey, I should have won that one. Yes, you should have. Okay, thank you anyway. It was a close fight. You don't say, hey, Guram's a bum because of this. It's Mateusz Gamrot. He's one of the top guys. But you look and just say to yourself, okay, he's been a little fortunate in that regard. Then you look at the losses he's had, a little unfortunate. So I think it kind of washes out. For me, he's like a guy who's a little bit less than the sum of his parts, to be respectful, right? He's got a lot of good pieces. He looks strong. He looks physical. He can hit. He can land some good shots. But ultimately, he could fall apart down the stretch. I think he's a guy that you can predictably say he will lose round threes in most of his fights. And when you look at his class of competition pre-UFC, there's nothing that really jumps out. So he's a guy that trains with the right people, and he's got some of the right names on his ledger. Hey, he's fought tough guys, but I'm just not sure we really know where he's at in terms of talent evaluation. I feel like if this was a Contender Series fight right now, the line would be a lot closer to -110 apiece. And I think both these guys have some marketability, but who's more marketable? I'd say it's the guy who's coming off of a Cage Warriors stint where he's fighting a lot of the biggest prospects in Europe. And then he's coming into this fight with a lot of experience and a lot of confidence. He just won a fight easily via stoppage. And now he's coming in off the strength of that training camp. So yeah, it's on a little bit of short notice, but it's like, imagine short notice after you just finished somebody in the first round. I'm ready to go. I feel like I'm $1 million right now. Let's run it again. And I do think Guram's a guy that, for as talented as he is, he can be stopped. We've seen that now. He can be hurt, and I wouldn't be surprised if something similar happened again. Because it's not the fight that's on paper. Hey, this is gonna be a tough one. I really got to get ready. Sometimes it's the fight where you're like, hey, it's some Cage Warriors guy. I'm gonna embarrass this guy, and then he's still there in round 2. He's still there in round 3, and you're saying to yourself, oh God. Is it happening again? Oh, no, it's happening again. And he loses his third fight in a row, and he gets cut from the promotion, having gone like what should have been 0-4. And that's my contrarian case here. I'm going to do the tape a little bit deeper, make sure that I have my ducks in a row, but that's my gut feeling here. And also, I think the line being as close as it is an indicator of that, because I don't think anybody outside the sharp market and the Cage Warriors, studiers know who Vucenic is.
Okay. Fair enough, man. Fair enough. It's nice to disagree and get the opposing viewpoint sometimes on these types of spots. I don't know that I'm betting Guram this week. In fact, I'm like 90% certain that I'm not. I'm still going to pick him just because this angle of, short notice fights up a weight class for your UFC debut. That's a tough spot. We've seen a lot of people fail in that spot before, and we have seen people take these types of opportunities, and I call it getting jumped by the UFC. You know what I mean? They're like, we don't give a fuck. Get your ass in here. We have a schedule to keep. They throw you in the fight and then sink or swim after that. We'll get you a brand new shiny contract. You can go to the weight class you really want to be in after that, right? So I could see this kid being legitimate and then coming into the UFC, taking his first L, and then having a fine career after that. We'll see how that works. I'm not sure what his striking looks like up here at 155. I mean, he was styling on bums in Cage Warriors at 145 in the catchweight fight that he just talked. But again, those guys are nowhere near the level of Guram Kutateladze. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. I will be very curious to watch this fight. I'm a little worried about Guram's durability at this point. How could you not be after the wars that he's been in his UFC fights, and then especially getting finished in his last one? So that is a little bit concerning. But frankly, this guy goes to his back, Liam. And that's something that I've said always. If you give me a guy that falls on their back versus a guy who's willing to take top position, I'll take the guy on top. And I think Guram's going to have a size and wrestling advantage here in this spot. This kid may get fancy looking for a guillotine. He'll be willing to fall to his back and chase a sub. And I think Guram will take advantage of those opportunities, and he'll get on top of him and he'll grind out minutes, especially if he's concerned about his chin. He'll take the fight to the ground and look for a grappling path when he's bigger and stronger. So we'll see. Happy to respectfully disagree here on this one, but I can understand the concerns. And frankly, the line is terrifying because you don't want to lay minus 205 on a guy struggling with some of the issues that Guram has been.
Can I shout one comment? Our guy Pepe Sylvia says, is he the Fatima Klein of the week? And I do think that is always a possibility, right? People are trying to talent evaluate these prospects, and sometimes we overestimate them, although I will say I was on JJ that time, and sometimes we underestimate them. On the opposite side, I could give you Muhammad Naimov plus 400 against Jamie Malarkey, sent him to the shadow realm, up a weight class in a UFC debut. And then how about he got the flip script on him, right? He got, in his last fight, the UFC debutant on short notice, Felipe Lima, said, give me that UFC W. I'm taking it, with the rear naked choke, 3rd round comeback as well. So I think that's just a couple counter examples. It could go both ways in these debutant fights. And I think that Vucenic may be a little bit more like the latter than the former. But let's find out. It's a great fight.
That's the best part. We get to find out on Saturday. All right, guys, here we go. Next up, we got big old sloppy heavyweight action, baby. Shamil Gadziev takes on Lord Kong Dante Elmays. Oh, God, Liam. It's Dante Elmays fight week again. I can't, bro. I just can't anymore with this guy. So you guys know the story, right? I lost my ass betting on Dante Elmays time and time and time again. And I kept looking at this guy and going, he's got the skill set. At least start, the beginning of the skill set. At heavyweight, you don't need to have as much of a skill set. It's more about the tools and the physicality. He's bigger than everybody, man. He's got a reach advantage over everybody. He can wrestle. When this guy gets on top of people, you ain't moving him. And that's all you need at heavyweight, because a lot of these guys don't wrestle. And I just fell in love with the framework of Dante Elmays. And I thought, this guy's going to win some fights and he's going to win me some money. And he's always right near that pick'em price tag. Small plus money, small chalk. And then I went hard when he fought some nobody named Hamdi. I went hard when Dante Elmays fought some bum named Hamdi. And Liam, when these guys pop for performance-enhancing products that get them wins where they otherwise probably shouldn't, the bookies don't refund tickets. So Hamdi came into the UFC, pulled a fast one, got himself a dub, was never heard from ever again. But my bankroll still has an L on it from him scraping away that decision win with Dante Elmays. And then I found the perfect spot. I went, you know what? I'm going to get all my dollars back. I'm going to get it all back when Dante Elmays fights the ghost of Andrei Arlovsky. And I went big, Liam. I went big again. Thank God Dante Elmays got that fight done for me. But I will tell you, cautionary tale. Mays made that fight as hard as humanly possible for himself. It took him until about 8 minutes into the fight, we're deep into round 2, that he finally realizes, oh, I'm faster than this slow old man. Oh, I can just come forward and swing on this guy and this fight's over. I realized that in about 5 minutes watching tape. I thought he was going to knock him out in round 1. But Dante Elmays will do everything he can to make a fight close and or lose it every time without fail. His IQ is in the negatives. So I said never again. I got lucky. I took my bag. I got my money back. We are never betting on Dante Elmays ever again. And then he just got the perfect fight matchup. I put 1 unit, small bet, 1 unit on Dante Elmays at plus 105 in his last fight. Thank God he got the win for me. But I feel like I'm flirting with danger, Liam. I mean, you go to the bar, you look down the bar, and just the most gorgeous redhead you've ever seen in your life. You know she's just going to destroy your soul and everything you've built for yourself in life financially. But just one little sip of the drink, and you're willing to take that risk. Like that's Dante Elmays for me these days. But man, he's big, he's strong, he can grapple, but he's slow. He hits hard, but he's low volume. He does not react well to getting hit. He does not react well to not being the bully. When you pressure him, he just doesn't seem to respond well. He's 36 years old. He has not made the improvements that I wanted to see him make. Don'Tale Mayes should be bigger. He should have a reach advantage. But frankly, I think Shamil Gadzhiev is the more physical force in there. He's the guy who's willing to come forward, step on the gas pedal, and throw hands. And he hits hard. 34 years old. Started MMA when he was like 30. I mean, late to the game. In heavyweight, like I said, it's all about physicality. That's really all that matters at this stage. And so that's okay. He's not the most skilled guy. But if you're going to go in there and throw hands, he's more athletic. He's faster. He hits harder. And I don't think he's going to run into a Jairzinho type of situation where Mayes kind of rope-a-dopes him for 15 minutes and then hurts him after he slows down. And in a 15-minute fight, I'm not sure that Shamil Gadzhiev will slow down enough for Don'Tale Mayes to have that kind of a situation happen. On top of that, you check out his Instagram, he's working on recent UFC cut Muhammad Mokaev and Ilir Latifi. Like, this guy's working hard on his wrestling. He's rounding out his MMA game. It's Gadzhiev, man. It's Gadzhiev or nothing here for me. He's a minus 238 favorite right now, minus 240. And frankly, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes Don'Tale Mayes this week. Liam, talk to me about this fight, man. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I think that the line is off, first and foremost, right? I think that it's a little too wide for Gadzhiev. I'm not a Don'Tale Mayes guy, but when you look back, Hamdi Abdelwahab, right? I know he's considered a random, and he is a random, right? He kind of just burst on the scene out of nowhere. He wasn't very deep in his MMA experience, but he was training at Killer Bee Academy in New Jersey. It's well known in the area. I'm not saying it's like the world's greatest gym. I'm just saying it's like they compete at local jiu-jitsu tournaments, stuff like that. So that, they're around. And when you look at Hamdi, right? He actually placed like 10th, I think, in Greco-Roman in the Olympics. So it's not like he's a nobody. He's just like, he kind of just like anonymous, right? Virtually anonymous Egyptian wrestler, Greco-Roman, which, by the way, in terms of like freestyle gets, X amount of visibility in the public sphere in the US. Greco gets under the table amount of visibility. It's just not very cared about in the US compared to other places around the world. So I think that Hamdi kind of snuck under the radar for that reason. And the only reason that I thought he was live in that spot, I picked him to win there, was because I was like, he is a freak athlete. When you just look at the global participatory rate of wrestling, there's a lot of people that do it around the world. And to get to an Olympic level typically means you're a freaky athlete. Also, Don'Tale Mayes is an idiot, right? Which we saw when he goes to hit like the, what's his name? He hasn't fought in so long. I'm blanking on it. The Russian kid who used to be a Zabit. He tried to hit like the Zabit, like stepping outside trip where you like push the guy on the shoulder and just flat back himself in the middle of the cage. That was a really remarkable decision by him. But you look at what Don'Tale Mayes brings to the table. He's had a bunch of UFC fights, right? We saw Gadzhiev get rushed right away to a main event spot, and he got very badly exposed. His win in the UFC is Martin Buday, and Martin Buday is okay, but he's certainly nothing special, right? He's a very average guy. He's a prospect on the rise, but he's a former video game player. And so in that one, I was just thinking to myself as well, I'm like, is a video game player really going to do great against like the former, national athlete on the volleyball team, right? And by the way, we're in the Olympic season, so the volleyball player from the national team is getting his crack. And when you look at what he brings to the table, he's athletic. He throws a lot of heavy punches in the early going, but he has not had many fights go deep. He is a guy that can gas out, and he also can give up really bad grappling positions. I had said when he fought Greg Velasco on Contender Series, bet the ends by sub, bet Gadzhiev by sub. I was like, I think he's the better guy, but he will make a bad decision that gets his back taken in this fight. And then instantly he gets his back taken in the fight. And Velasco, it's just because he is a jiu-jitsu guy at heart. Like, he got hurt badly. I think he got hit with an uppercut and like fell backwards. And this dude jumps on top of him and he just like passes to his back and goes for the choke. Loses it, loses position, loses the fight. But Velasco is kind of a crafty Northeast, big belly grappler. That's what he brings to the table at heavyweight, and he's good at it. So I thought he was going to give him some problems. That's what happened. Don'Tale Mayes has been around the game for a long time. He's had a bunch of fights at this level. So would I be stunned if he can mix it up in the grappling with this guy? We saw Gadzhiev shoot a takedown so bad. He missed Rosenstrike and ran headfirst into the cage, guys. Like, he's still clearly green and quite a work in progress. And so I do think he should win here, but you got high expectations at 70% for a guy who I just mentioned in the first round shot headfirst into the apex cage and missed his opponent by a half a country mile. So I just think that he is a very average guy at heavyweight. Don'Tale Mayes is pretty average guy at heavyweight. Gadzhiev should get the win. I'd probably put that closer to minus 150, a 60% outcome than where it's at right now. But that being said, I would prefer, if I was playing him, to look towards the finish props potentially, because I do think Don'Tale Mayes, when he gets put in bad positions underneath, can be a little flaky.
Absolutely. And dude, you just got to go back as far as the Rodrigo Nascimento fight. He doesn't like getting touched. And that's the biggest thing for me, is that on the feet, he just reacts so badly to getting hit. And you look at the guys that he's been fighting. Nascimento's the hardest hitter that Don'Tale Mayes has fought in some time. Machado, Arlovsky, who, when he was winning was a split decision machine. Sakai, who's been let go by the UFC, and then Hamdi out grappled him when they were both exhausted. Parisian, Martinez. He has not fought a puncher. So, I mean, now he's getting Shamil Gaziev, and we've seen him ducking and running for cover and covering his head like this to get away from people that have got pop on their hands. I'm pretty sure Gaziev's going to knock him out. I'm with you. I know that it seems crazy with the price tag, and I'm not going to buy into Gaziev making such extreme grappling advances in one fight camp that he taps out a guy like Don'Tale Mayes. I think he'll just get on top of him and do what heavyweights do, and that's go, monkey style ground and pound, right? Like you were talking about before with Sam Hughes. If he gets on top of him,
just remember though, Cyril Gane submitted him with a move that doesn't exist.
This is fair. That's absolutely fair. So sub on the table, inside the distance, probably where it's at. But hey, Liam, I don't know how many people are thinking sub. This may be one of those ones where you don't get cute, right? Knockout is plus 110. Inside the distance is minus 105. I'm playing ITD.
I would 1,000%
don't lose your ass on the plus 110. I've made that mistake more than once. So I'm telling you guys, PSA, don't make that mistake. Keep the money. Pay just that extra little bit to have the sub included in there on that. Speaking of PSA, Liam, you guys probably don't know this. In Abu Dhabi, this is a mimosa and waffles fight week, not a fireball and popcorn fight week. It's early fights this week, baby. So make sure you guys are up bright and early on Saturday to watch these fights. Don't sleep in, because if you're expecting your usual 6 p.m. Eastern start time, you'll miss half the card. So just an FYI. Forgot to mention that from the top of the show. All right. Next up, we have got Muhammad Yahya, and he's taking on Cuy Fernandez. And I actually said that wrong. It's Cowie Fernandez. Sorry about that, guys. I actually looked up the pronunciations on this one because I sounded so stupid last time I broke down one of his fights. You've got Cowie Fernandez, 8-2, 0-1 in the UFC. Dropped his debut. He was a victim of D1 Diakese. Not going to have to deal with that anymore. He's a Novo and Yao guy. You guys know that I like Novo and Yao. They've got some solid history, especially, their grappling chops, black belts coming out of Novo and Yao. Definitely respected over there. And he is taking on Muhammad Yahya, who is 12-4, 30 years old. And a guy that I knew the name of, Liam. One of those ones where you look at and you're like, I've looked you up before. Like, couldn't remember for the life of me who this guy was. He was the dude the UFC brought in to lose to Trevor Peek. That's who this guy was. They brought him in, fun fight, get out there, bang it out. You both suck, but we kind of want Peek to be able to get a win here. Sure enough, that's kind of how this thing went down. This guy is so bad at grappling, Liam. I told this story the first time I broke down his fight. You watch back his regional scene, and he's fighting a guy who's 5-3 when he's got like 10 professional fights already. He's fighting it was more than that. Anyway, he's fighting a guy that's got way less MMA experience than him. He gets taken down and he's lost. His corner is like screaming out the instructions on how to work back to his feet. This guy's never grappled. He's absolutely just got no grappling chops whatsoever. And sure enough, first thing Trevor Peek does in their fight is come out, bull rush him, take him down, put him on his ass. Trevor Peek, the guy who's known for tomahawk punches, came out and put his wrestling shoes on to decisionate this guy because that's where the biggest edge was. And props to Trevor Peek for showing off some high fight AQ and taking the path of least resistance for once. But Yaya's a guy that you just cannot count on the ground at all whatsoever. And I think that's going to work real poorly for him here in this fight. I know he's training with Hamzat, but I don't think it's going to make a difference in one fight because Fernandez being a Novo and Yao guy grappling, he got D1 Diakazed and just controlled on the mat. That's something I don't think a lot of people are necessarily going to be able to do. This guy's really good in scrambles. He's got long kicks on the feet. I actually like his range control when he's striking. And against a guy who he's not going to have to worry about being able to out wrestle him, he's going to have just a massive grappling advantage. This is another one, Liam, where if you're looking at angles and contrarian and you want to find the weasel, like, yeah, for an 0-1 guy, is this line too wide? Probably is. He's minus 360, but at the end of the day, I see him taking home Yaya's neck. I just think there's such a big gap in the grappling chops that there's no way this guy doesn't find his way to a sub this week. That's my read on it. I think it's going to be Fernandez by submission. I will target that prop rather than laying the minus 360, but I think that's kind of the way it's going to go down. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, that's been getting bet down over the course of the week, and that's certainly the way I'd approach it if I was on the Kawe Fernandez side. Some kind of finish prop. Honestly, though, I'm not really sold on Kawe Fernandez based on that first fight that we saw with Mark Diakase. Certainly, you keep an open mind, right? I'll give him another chance here, but he's a guy that I feel Muhammad Yahya is not very good. But I honestly felt it was the opposite. I thought they were trying to find some guy on the UFC roster that he could beat. And I was like, that's why they're, drafting Trevor Peek. No disrespect to Trevor Peek, but he's just a guy that's very raw in terms of skill. He's got athleticism. He's got heart. He's got will. He can punch your lights out. But we've just seen, his skill isn't always, the best. But he does train in the United States of America, where you have a lot of opportunities to wrestle and grapple with high-level folks. You actually see Trevor Peek. He trains with a bunch of good guys, so he's coming along in that department. And I think that for Muhammad Yahya, you saw his level of competition on the regional scene wasn't very high. So that's why they tried to give him a reasonable fight. And I think they saw Kawe Fernandez out there, throw 26 or land 26 significant strikes in his last fight. And they were like, okay, maybe this is a manageable task. Maybe this is a fight where we can make it close enough. We could job him out on the cards or something, because I don't know that Kawe Fernandez has a very bright future. I think he's a guy that whether or not he wins this fight is sort of, inconsequential to the UFC's bottom line long term, whereas they've got one guy from this part of the world that they're trying desperately to find a way to book him a win, and he's still plus 340 because he's not very good. So that's what they're left with, right? Beats the alternative. But I do just think of Kawe Fernandez as a pretty expendable guy, and I thought that based on the resume that he has coming in, I've been doing these striking sports for so long. I've been doing this jiu-jitsu. I'm a BJJ black belt. I just thought he looked pretty average when he was fighting Mark Diakase at best, and coming off of a loss, not a lot of momentum coming into the contest, minus 400. All those things just scream red flags to me.
Okay. That is fair enough, man. Fair enough. And like I said, low-level fight, not overly sold on it. Don't want to lay minus 360. I will target the finish prop if I'm doing anything like that on this particular fight. And you know what? I don't see totals yet. I would look maybe violence on this one. I wouldn't be shocked. Usually when we see these low-level fights, I'm calling for the sub already, but whenever you see these types of low-level fights, Liam, it seems like these guys are able to expose the weaknesses of their opponents. And that's something where the higher level stuff, it's decision, right? Dana White just swore off giving anybody bonuses ever again because there were so many decisions on the last pay-per-view card. When you take that little bit of a step up, it's harder to finish these guys. When you're fighting low-level guys who want to come forward, people get knocked out. People get choked out. So I think if you're not looking to pick a side, if it's reasonable, I'd look for maybe an under here.
I do not hate that look at all, Clint. And the one other thing that I think is important to mention, you look at Mark Diakase, and he had 6 wins via decision in the UFC compared to just 2 finishes. He's not a finisher. Guys, I was there, unfortunately, in person when he just held on for dear life to Vyacheslav Borishev, and just nothing happened for 15 minutes. It was an anti-fight. So, yeah, that's what he's been doing in his recent UFC run, unfortunately.
Yep. And I have donated time and time again to the submission prop, thinking that Diakase wanted to keep his job, and he just never even bothered to go for it. But c'est la vie. All right, guys. Hey, we are closing in on 1,000 live viewers, everybody. We got 953 rocking with us live on a Monday. Do us a favor. Come on, share the show. Hit the like button. Let's freaking go. We got some good fights to talk about. Next up, maybe not the best fight. Alonzo Menifield. He takes on Azamat Murzakanov. Couple of guys that I just can't get right, Liam. Couple of guys that I need you to help me out with. And speaking of, a couple of guys I haven't seen for a minute, Addicted to Combat. What's up, buddy? Good to see you in the chat. Been a minute. Liam, I've struggled with Alonzo Menifield. This guy has really just done the opposite of everything I ever expected. He's old, he's short, he should gas out with all the muscle on his frame, and he doesn't. I never thought for 1 second this guy would have a 4-fight UFC winning streak, but here we are. This guy's so bad he lost to William Knight and somehow was fighting Carlos Ulberg in his last fight. I mean, like, he makes no sense. Like, when you're expecting this guy to get outclassed, he finds a way to win. So he's getting better too. Like, his grappling chops have looked pretty damn good. He's actually made huge improvements in that area. He's got a decision win over Dustin Jacoby, which I lost an absolute pile on because I expected Dustin Jacoby to just absolutely outclass him from bell to bell. I can't figure him out. He's good when he's supposed to be bad, and he's bad when he's supposed to be good. And I just keep zigging when I'm supposed to be zagging. Don't remind me. We don't need to talk about the Jim Crute rematch, guys. I thought Jimmy Crute was going to come in reinvigorated and leveled up and ready to make a run, and instead he was ready to put his gloves in the center of the cage. So that one felt bad too. But Alonzo Menifield is on the short list of public enemy number 1 for me. He's cost me a lot. His opponent here, Azamat Murzakanov, kind of a similar situation. 13-0 power puncher from Russia. This guy is 35 years old, somehow an undefeated prospect, I guess, at 35, 36 years old. Oh, just a rough, tough run here in the UFC so far. Tafon Nchukwi, Devin Clark, my favorite fade. I did go ahead and get a win there on that one, thank God. And then Dustin Jacoby, which again, expected a little bit more out of that fight with Dustin Jacoby. But the Tafon Nchukwi fight, Liam, that's the one that really got me in the short shorts, man. I had a bet on Tafon Nchukwi, and he won 2 rounds against this guy. And then I will never forgive his cornerman for screaming into his face, "Go out and finish him, Tafon. You got him right where you want him, Tafon. Go make a statement, Tafon." And he walked right into a right hand. It's like, if you had just let the guy keep fighting exactly the way he was fighting, he would have won the fight. Maybe he'd still be in the UFC. But instead, he took a couple of years off his life, got some extra brain trauma, and lost that one. So naturally, seeing that, I expected Dustin Jacoby, a much better striker than Tafon Nchukwi, would be able to fight to the same level game plan and win an easy decision. Nope, that ain't happening either. So I'm real bad at both Alonzo Menifield and Azamat Murzakanov fights, man. Murzakanov has murderous power in his hands. You love to see it. Alonzo Menifield, kind of a Yoel Romero explode and reload type, right? Like, he's got big power. All those muscles do real good work when he wants to. And then he finds those short moments to kind of rest and get a little bit of a breather in there. Looking at my UFC stats, I'm confused because I don't think I've ever seen Alonzo Menifield have a height advantage over anybody. And I think somehow he might be the bigger framed human being in this particular fight. And that makes me kind of scratch my head and go, why is he not favored here? Now, I know Alonzo Menifield is coming off just getting nuked by Carlos Ulberg, but let me tell you, in 2024, I don't think Azamat Murzakanov is anywhere near Carlos Ulberg. The height, the reach difference, maybe even the power difference, I'm not sure it's quite the same thing. But that number's gone up. I looked at Alonzo Menifield plus 170. He's plus 180 now. We talked about it before. This is a what have you done for me lately kind of sport, right? But frankly, Liam, if he doesn't get deaded early, Menifield might have the better cardio. If he doesn't get deaded early, Menifield might be the better wrestler. I think there's a lot of ways Alonzo Menifield can actually win this fight. Now, folks, that means run your ass to the window and bet Azamat Murzakanov by knockout. For the love of God, fade the shit out of me. I think Alonzo Menifield is live, Liam. Am I crazy? What's going on here?
All right. Well, this is going to bring us to our second disagreement. Listen, is he live? I mean, I guess so, but I'm just going to give you my case here for Murzakanov. And it's pretty short and sweet. Number one, he's coming back way too quickly, right? He got knocked out in the first round. Clint, that was an embarrassing knockout. I mean, we can all agree. There's ways to lose a fight where we can all say, even Jiang Lee, right? You got knocked out in the first round in the first minute. And you could say, hey, hang your head up high, kid. Went out swinging, went out gone. Don't sprint dead first at your opponent, put an overhand, get clocked, and fall to the ground. Don't do that, right? Don't do that. And when you look at Alonzo Menifield overall, here's where I can't ever bet on him again, right? Number one, that performance against Solberg, boom, there you go. I'm already out. Then let's go back in time and look at this guy against William Knight. Brother, there was a round that took place where not one MMA thing happened. They clinched against the fence, and what they were left to score was William Knight with his comical amount of muscles chasing after Alonzo Menifield with hooks that did not land, but because no MMA activity had taken place all round, they had to score the fight for William Knight because he attempted offense. That was the mere attempt of offense was the best and most productive MMA thing that happened in 5 minutes. And so I think Alonzo Menifield is a gasser, despite the fact that, you know, he should have some ability to push into the later rounds against a guy like Murzakanov who doesn't keep a high pace. You just look at him in the past. William Knight isn't some electric pace individual. So it's just like, I feel like we've seen him have really bad lackluster decisions before. We've seen him blow finishes. Jimmy Crute is basically out. Then he gets taken down a million times to not get the finish in that fight. And then you look at otherwise, when he steps up in competition, he just gets flattened and embarrassed. When you look back at the last time that I can remember he fought a southpaw, I bet Ovince St. Preux, I believe he was an underdog in that spot. He flatlined him with a left hook in the first 2 rounds. So I think that ultimately Alonzo Menifield doesn't have a very clear, cogent style. He's had the benefit of the fact he's a very good athlete. He can get on top of guys, beat them up, you know, and I think that's his biggest calling card to his UFC wins. If he can either land a huge punch or take you down and dominate from on top. But I think when he can't do that, he's been shown to be not a very sophisticated striker, gets exposed in longer exchanges. And I think that his grappling is mostly a function of strength. So I don't believe in him here. I think Azamat Murzakanov is probably the more sophisticated wrestler of the two. I think he's probably a little better in that category. And I think that we've seen he finds kill switches on people, right? I think if he fought William Knight, he's not going to have a round 3 where nothing happens. And, you know, what happened when he needed the win, like you mentioned, in round 3, he went out and got it and knocked his guy silly, right? That's kind of what he does when he needs to track down a finish late. And I do think he's a little low volume. You know, if he's a huge favorite, it's tough to get behind him on the money line. But you asked me my opinion, who wins this fight and at what clip do they win it? I think, you know, Alonzo Menifield's coming back way too quick. I think Murzakanov wins. I think he wins at a high clip.
Okay. All right. And guys, there you have it. I mean, like I said, Liam, sometimes you got to know when to throw in the towel, right? I have been so bad at picking these guys. I have zigged when I should have zagged every single time. I'm quite literally going to fade myself here. And I'll agree with you that Azamat Murzakanov is the side simply because I can see a way that Alonzo Menifield wins this fight. Is Azamat Murzakanov based on that fact alone? And it's funny because I will tell you guys, I know I've been on a real rough skid here lately, right? I post everything publicly. I'm always going to tell you what you guys bet. I'm not running and hiding from anything. So I've been bad. I've been real bad in 2024. But I've proven long-term that I'm actually a profitable MMA gambler. So all the people that want to victory lap me and say that they fade me on a weekly basis, that shit don't work, guys. I've got the numbers to prove it. Long-term, I'm a winning gambler in MMA. So it will come around. It will turn. But there are times when I will tell you outright, and this is one of them, fade the shit out of me. This is a wrong opinion, and I know that myself. I'm literally going to fade myself this week. And if I get a decent number on Murzakanov by KO or something, or maybe if I find I'm tempted on maybe there's a little anchor action this week, Liam. If I'm doing the parlay thing, I'll probably throw a Murzakanov in there for S's and G's because I do not trust myself thinking that this man has any type of a shot in this fight. So it's a lock. Azamat Murzakanov. That's it. Fade the shit out of me on that one, guys. We'll agree. And Dirty Rag says, trust your balls. You know, Dirty Rag, I appreciate it. You're right. You are supposed to trust your balls, but to quote the great Professor Oak, there's a time and a place. It's not here. This is not the place for that. This is not the time for that. All right, guys, real quick, got to shout out some of the sponsors. This show is brought to you by a lot of wonderful people. First and foremost, Fight Numbers. Our guy John Kelly has put together a dream team. Pepe Silva in the chat can attest to some of this. Fight Numbers has wonderful tools, especially for DFS, and they've got this wonderful board here for the odds. They've got tools for your DFS. I already mentioned, sorry about that. Pros picks on here, lots of wonderful information, guys. They have personally taken me from donating DFS to actually making a little bit of money, or at least breaking even in DFS. And I'm terrible at DFS. Liam, I made $23 in DFS at UFC 304. I didn't even just get my money back. I won enough to buy Taco Bell for the wife, and that's because of Fight Numbers. So if you guys want to stop donating, use some of these tools, get a little bit better in your DFS game, Fight Numbers is where it's at. You can get a break on your subscription. Link in the description below here for my link on Fight Numbers, but we're big fans of them and we're friends with a lot of the guys on here. So definitely go and support them, guys. This is the home of Fight. That's where you're sitting right now. But if you want to inject MMA action straight into your veins, join the Telegram. They're going to blast out news, anything that happens in the world of mixed martial arts. It is all right here for you in the Telegram group. We've already got 2.5 thousand members in this group, and you can hang out and chat with any and all of them and check that shit out. My boy Curtis Action Man, he's back taking on Holland. I love that fight so much, and I found about it through the Telegram group. So join the Home of Fight Telegram, join the Home of Fight Discord, come hang out with us in those areas. Spectation Sports, nothing on the docket here, guys. Nothing coming up right now for Spectation Sports. However, if you're looking for regional scene action, especially if you're studying for Dana White's Contender Series, you're going to need Spectation Sports because that's where most of these shows are at. Aries FC, Cage Warriors, or not Cage Warriors, sorry, Cage Titans. That's where a lot of these shows are, is they're on Spectation Sports, and a lot of them have betting lines. So make sure you check it out. 20% off of your subscription using promo code DieHard. The link to that is also in the description below. Last but certainly not least, the big one, Bet Openly. I keep telling you guys about Bet Openly, and people are having fun making free money entering my contests that are sponsored and brought to you by Bet Openly. They allow me to give away lots of dollars to you guys for free. So if nothing else, just for the shot at free cash, you should be signed up for Bet Openly because I give shit away left and right. And then once you have that money, you guys can build a bankroll. They have literally saved over $7 million for gamblers because it's peer-to-peer 1% juice. You're saving money and getting a better number on literally everything that you bet every single day. Baseball, MMA, basketball, whatever you want. Football's right around the corner. I can't wait to gamble my ass off on football, and I'm going to do a lot of it here on Bet Openly. Like I said, it's peer-to-peer, so a literal human being is taking the opposite side of your bet somewhere, someplace, and for me, that helps me sleep better at night. I'm not paying for some hedge fund baby, a rich bookie's son going to bed every single night, sleeping on velvet sheets. It's another degenerate out there that I donated my hard-earned cash to. So feel a little bit better about where the money goes in the end. It's another upside for using Bet Openly. All right, guys, there we go. That's enough for the sponsors. This is UFC Abu Dhabi. I'm talking with my boy Liam Picks Fights, and we're going to break down the best fights on this card. We got 5 or 6 more to go. Let's get into it. The return of Yoel Alvarez, and he's taking on Elves Brener. I talked about Brener just a little bit earlier in the show, Liam. There's a couple guys who have ran into each other once or twice already on this card, and Brener is one of those guys. 16-4, and he has got that dog in him, Liam. This guy. Okay, for my geeks out there, I swear, Darren Elkins passed along his dog. He passed along his durability and his ability to fight back after taking an absolute beating to this guy. The way, like, if you've ever seen My Hero Academia, the way All Might was like, okay, I'm the strongest hero on the planet Earth. I'm going to pack all my powers into a little box here and donate them to you so you can use it instead. You get to be the bearer of this weapon for the rest of your life. I swear that's what happened here. Darren Elkins said, here's my soul, Elvis Brener. You can now carry the torch for us, because this guy will be bloody. He will be beaten. He will look like he's exhausted. And then his opponent's hurt. And then the guy he's fighting is stumbling, fighting for their life, looking for a way out. Like, he flips a switch, Liam, and he comes out of nowhere. And then he just pours it on you. I mean, I took a risk. I took a big risk. I parlayed up Oralbai in Brener's last fight, a guy that I've got high hopes for. I think Oralbai is a sleeping monster. The guy is so well-rounded. He's an incredible grappler. And that's that IQ I talked about, where you've got to be willing to take the grind to Brener. You've got to be able to take him down and secure those minutes where he can't hurt you in order to get by him. And that's what Oralbai did. He still was in danger over and over. I think on 3 separate occasions, Elvis Brener reversed that guy, got on top of him, mounted him, took his back. I mean, like, this is a world-class guy, and Brener was finding these moments where a lesser man would have found their way to getting finished. Like, It's unreal what Brener is capable of. I love this guy, and he just never gives up on himself. Now he's taking on Yoel Alvarez, 20-3, 31 years old. He looks like that kid in high school or in junior high school. If any of you guys ever did athletics or wrestled or anything, the Mexican kid that grew the mustache before anybody else and then just never shaved it. That's what Yoel Alvarez looks like. He's 6'3". He's absolutely massive. 5-inch reach advantage here in this spot. Another one of those, how the fuck does this guy make weight type of people? He shouldn't be fighting at 155. It shouldn't be humanly possible, but here we are. It is. I love the way this guy keeps the range, right? You're either at the end of his strikes where he can kick you and you can't touch him, or you're clinched. That's it. There's no option. There's no in the middle. He's taking out the tall man defense because he's either kicking the shit out of you or you're on the ground. Those are the only two choices. So he just bullies people physically, Liam, all over the place. And then when he finds his way to the ground, he dominates there. He's so slick. He's such a big guy, and he can take the back like a small guy. He can throw arm bars up like a 115-pound woman. I mean, he's so fast on the ground for what he does. But man, I did not like his last fight. Now, we talked a little bit about Diakaze earlier in the show. He was losing to D1 Diakaze. This man was getting controlled. This man was getting out hustled by Mark Diakaze. And I know. Diakaze just looks to hold you down and grind, and that's all he does. But apparently that works on Yoel Alvarez, a guy that could be fighting very easily at 170 pounds. He can just be sat on. You mind your P's and Q's, and you can just get on top of this guy. One thing that worried me was he got desperate at one point. He tried to take the back of Mark Diakaze and easily got reversed. He ends up on his back on bottom. Now, he's more than happy to play guard from there. We talked about the submission arsenal of this guy, 17 wins by sub. But I'm looking at this and I'm going, are we really that sold on him? He has taken a lot of really big gaps in his career. He's been really inactive. It's been a year since the last time we saw him. It seems like he's got a canceled fight. Every other fight announcement, he's getting pulled out for one reason or another. And even though I've been high on Alvarez his entire career, I feel like we might have seen the limits of what he does. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he finds a way to submit Brener, because that's what this guy does. But Brener breaks people. And if you're going to give me the guy that will hit a reversal or a sweep or spin into you and then elbow the shit out of your head when you're willing to drop to your back and hang on for dear life and maybe snatch an arm, I'll take the guy that's going to get on top and elbow you to hell. I think we got another live dog, Liam. We've got Alvarez minus 185 favorite right now, plus 155 on Elves Brener. And I think I like violence. I think I'll take Elvis Brener in this spot. What do you make of this fight, man? Talk to me.
I think we're going to agree here.
That's what I'm talking
Listen, it's never an easy fight when you're taking on a guy like Yoel Alvarez. Half the time he's going to miss the weight. He's not afraid to foul you, kick you in the nuts, punch you, he'll hit you with the Captain Insano, 2 fingers to the eye. He's that kind of guy, but he's a winner, right? He's a good fighter. You look at his losses, can't really, denigrate him, right? Oh, you lost to Demiris Magulov when he was still quality. You lost to Arman Tsarukyan, but I'll just let you guys know, I bet Arman Tsarukyan massively before that fight. I think it was 5 units, 2+ units inside the distance. I was very confident he was going to win that fight. And unfortunately, I was on Magic and Andrew's show that week, and he's like boys with Yoel Alvarez. So it was just one of those uncomfortable times where, you're on opposite sides of the fence and you got a personal attachment, but I just had to trust my own read in that case. And I was saying, I just think if he gets into the ground, this guy is a machine. He's going to pass the guard. He's going to get on top. And I don't think he's getting guard subbed. I don't think any of that's going to happen. I thought Charles Oliveira could do that to him, and he came a lot closer, by the way, but still wasn't able to do it to him. So you just see he's the wrong archetype to try and bring that game plan. Hey, if you come in with this attempt, I'm going to submit you on the way down. It's that didn't work. And the thing about it, guys, if you go back and watch that fight, hellacious amount of damage. You mentioned the fact that he didn't really come back, quickly to the octagon. How could he, right? He got absolutely beat to a pulp there. His nose was halfway sticking out from, you could just see a big gash where his face and skin used to be. So really bad damage that he took in that fight. Arman Tsarukyan, not a very polite gentleman with the elbows from the top position, right? He's just a vicious guy. And I think that when you look at how Arman approached that, I think Brener is going to try to approach it very similar. When you look at Brener, he brings pressure on the feet. He's willing to go mix it up and stand with somebody, but he's also willing to mix it up in all phases. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the shoot box, Diego Lima system. And you look at the guys he's training with, Charles do Bronx Oliveira, Ian Gary. These are top guys in the 155, 170-pound class. You look at the fact on short notice he shows up in Western Perth, Australia, different time zone, against a tough opponent in Zabira Tuhugov, who's been around a long time, gets the win. Great, impressive showing. Then he goes out against Guram Kutateladze. Like you mentioned, he's a little bit down in that fight. He was getting hit with some hard shots. He time traveled a little bit, but came back to it, found the way to finish. Here's the other thing that stands out to me about this guy. 4-6 career to the decision or something like that, 4-5. All of his losses, guys, are on the cards. So if you got to get one over on this guy, even Mirtabek Olarubai, like you mentioned, dominant guy, a guy who went out there and easily submitted Uros Medic, mugged him for his money. I said that was going to happen, by the way. Plus 525 on the subline. Mirtabek Olarubai minus 140. You won't see it again for a while. So it's just like that. I was very high on him there. I was a lot more nervous against Elves Brener. I was like, this is going to be a lot harder. I'm not following the chalk on this one. And in that fight, I think you saw a lot of the reasons why. Like, Mirtabek Olarubai is not a finesse wrestler grappler. He's a guy who's like, I'm going to hit you hard. I'm going to put you down. I'm just going to be a man about this all night, throw you around. It's not very sophisticated, right? It's just aggressive, hard-nosed, effective fighting. There's a lot that is powerful about what he does because it's so simple. He could do it all night. He could keep replicating it. Then you look at Joel Alvarez. It's a lot of finesse. It's a lot of, I'm trying to get you in this guillotine. I'm trying to get you in the triangle. I'm trying to do these things that look awesome when I pull them off. He's also got the power on the feet. We should mention the fact that his elbows are sick. He's got great knees to the body. He's got dirty clinch work. If you just stand on the feet with this guy and let him tee off in the clinch, his height is a weapon. He leverages that. He uses the length of his tools. He will hit you at the end of elbows. He will hit you with knees up the gut. But I think that we've got a guy in Brener who can take him down. He's very upright because he's 6'3", because he's so tall and long. These guys are just marks for takedowns, guys. When you see guys that are a little too tall for the average in the weight class, if they're upright to strike, their hips are right there to be taken. And we've seen guys like Jalen Turner get audited by Matt Frivola, who I don't think many people would have said beforehand, if he takes him down, he's just going to pass the guard, do whatever he wants to him, go for triangles from the mount. That's exactly what happened, guys. Literally, if you go back and rewatch that fight, that's what happened. And it's the same thing when these guys that are big, long, awkward, they can get off on Joe Duffy, who retired the fight after. Alexander Yakovlev, who went 3-6 in the UFC and got cut. What's his name? Danilo Belluardo, who, by the way, got on top, then got a reach through, like, wrist grab, reversal, TKO. That was sick. But also Danilo Belluardo, 0-2. I believe he's retired from competition in 2021. His wins have aged like milk. So it's not to say that his losses have aged poorly. He's only lost to the best guys. But he hasn't beaten somebody that mattered, and people are giving him a lot of credit. Mark Diakese, with all due respect, is the guy that made his style as boring as could possibly be. Every time he tried to fight interesting, he made a categorical error and got destroyed. So he's just a guy that had a tough run of it at the highest level. We wish him all the best. When you look at that fight, it didn't tell me, like, oh, my God, Joel Alvarez is back. It kind of told me, like, that he could beat the Mark Diakeses of the division, but I need to see him show me something in a step up. Right. And I do think this is a much harder fight. And so Elves Brener has kind of been on this mirror's edge where people are like, am I FOMOing now? It was plus 500. It was plus 500. Now am I FOMOing? It's like he lost a fight. I think the opportunity is now back to get on the Elves Brener stock a little lower. He's 26. He's the much younger guy. I think if he can get takedowns and not get submitted in round one, I think he's probably the guy who's got a much clearer path as the fight gets extended.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And Larry in the chat saying that Alvarez has only won via finish, and that's correct. And that's where, guys, I just don't think Brenner's getting finished. Like, it could happen. You know what I mean? This is a fight where we're throwing knees and elbows at each other and looking for the head. And some people try to hyperextend the other people's legs sometimes. Like, he could get hurt. He could get finished in this spot. But if you're training at Shoot the Box, if you're working with guys like the former champion, like, I'm not expecting you to get caught in many submissions. It could happen. What's up?
Got one note for you, Clint. I'm looking at props, which have only opened on offshore markets, obviously, at this stage of the game. But this is one of the fights where they haven't opened the props for this fight for whatever reason. Maybe it's a little bit harder to price this one out. Maybe they're expecting a little bit more volume, but I just found that a little bit interesting because my first thought was, if I was on the Alvarez side, I'd instantly be going contrarian, which is him by knockout. everybody will look at the fact he's got all these subs on his record, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at Elves Brener, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think he's going to be very difficult to tap. Some guys will tap when they get put in a bad situation. This guy is probably going to have to go to sleep, or you're going to have to snap his arm in half, and then he'll be like, okay, you got me. But other than that, I don't think he's giving up. And I do think, he could get knocked out. We saw that against Guram Kutateladze. He was on ice skates a little bit in that fight. And Joel Alvarez, I think his best win condition in fighting is to go out there, use that big size, and bully somebody in round one like he did Thiago Moises. That's the one bet I've ever lost on a Joel Alvarez fight. I was like, this is going to be levels. He's going to take him down. He's going to submit him. They never got to the ground, right? Thiago Moises was folding up the shot before they ever got going. And that's just what happens when a guy hits you with 50 elbows before you get started. So I think Joel Alvarez, front-loaded finisher. He knows I got 5, 7, 8 minutes to work, and then I'm going to be exhausted. So he comes out trying to kill you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good call. Very good call. And it's funny, Liam, I was on the flip side of that coin where I said, Thiago Moises, the one thing that I've really realized with him is that it's a bully thing. If you bully the bully, he will pack up and go home. So
that was when I learned my lesson, I will say. I have now faded him successfully since. But
yep, that led me to a beautiful bet on Benoit Saint-Denis when those two fought each other. So yeah, man, that's a strategy that has worked out very well for me in certain spots with Thiago Moises. But all right, I like it. I'm glad we agree. I'm glad we've got a live dog. You guys know I love betting my live dogs. And Liam, I do think we're finally starting to see the shoe drop. We've been seeing favorite, like all of 2024. It's just been massive. All the people on Instagram and Twitter want to tell me how stupid I am and how easy it is to make money in 2024 because the favorites just always win. Guys, it's like playing roulette. Like eventually other numbers are going to hit. You see black, red eventually shows up. It can go on for a real long time, but eventually it's coming, and it's a 50-50 proposition over 100,000 times. So the dogs are going to start barking, and they've been barking a little more recently.
And the number of reds before does not equal how many blacks will come next, which is like the gambler's fallacy that a lot of people have. It's just something where more often than not, we're due for regression, if anything. So I'm excited to see it, my man. You know me. I like an underdog, Clint.
I know. I love it. I absolutely love it. Hopefully the dogs are barking again for us here this week. I think we got a couple of really nice options. Next up, ladies, back on stage, we've got Mackenzie Dern taking on Lupita Godinez. And I got to tell you guys, as somebody that studies and works my ass off and spends all day Sunday researching and finding information for you guys to do this kind of a show and a podcast for free just to help you make your bets and DGen out with fellow lovers of the sport of mixed martial arts, it grinds my gears, Liam. It annoys me to no end that the UFC actually has Lupita documented as Lupi on her fights. If you guys have ESPN Plus, you cannot search Lupita Godinez and watch this woman fight. They literally have her under Lupi. That's a nickname. It's not her real name. And there's nobody else in the UFC that has that issue. And it drives me nuts that I copy and paste her name into ESPN Plus, delete the fucking thing, and have to type in Lupi manually before I'm allowed to see anything. Okay, sorry. Rant over. That bugs the shit out of me. All right. So you've got Mackenzie Dern, 13-5, 2-4 in her last 6. She's doing her very best Jessica Andrade impression right now, Liam. I feel like she's fighting every 3 months. Like, I don't know what the deal is, but she stepped the foot on the gas for her MMA career. She is speed running this contract session, looking to make as much money as humanly possible. Just keeps getting in there. I don't know what's going on with her, but she's looking for quick turnaround. I don't know if that's going to benefit her after the last one. Like, I get getting the experience. I get getting in there, working your game, staying busy. She's 31 years old. She's in her fighting prime, but like, damn, dude, the shots that she took from Lemos, that'll take years off your life. I had a bet on her against Lemos, and it really upsets me because, again, I've zigged when I should have zagged. I bet Mackenzie Dern against Lemos, but I didn't bet Verna Jandiroba for the exact same reasons. Instead, I bet Lemos because I was wrong when I bet on Dern and thought, well, of course she'll win this fight too. Doesn't work that way. Anyway, MMA math. Gotta love it. I thought Dern would take 1 or 2 shots from Lemos and then turn the tables, get the grappling going, get on top, use that slick BJJ. And she almost died, Liam. She almost died drying. She is tough as nails, though. This girl, when she got cracked by Lemos, I'm worried her face is fractured. And I'm not joking. I literally am worried her face is fractured. The way she fell and the way she covered up, like, it was over. Anybody else in that spot is done. Ref steps in, saves you. She saw the ref approaching, and took her hands away from her face. She immediately was like, no, I'm still in this. Like, jeez. I mean, I would have covered up and gone home. Lemos hits like a freaking truck. I thought she was dead. And she managed to fight her way back into that. And then not only that, but the next time they were on her feet, she didn't shoot for a double leg. She bit down on her mouthpiece and she threw an overhand right that caught Lemos because she was not expecting that coming back at her. This chick is a fighter. She is tough. She is stupid durable, and she will fight for your bottom dollar. On top of that, she's a world-class BJJ player who is really developing as far as her striking skill is concerned. She hasn't quite pieced those together perfectly just yet, and now she's swimming with sharks, thus the record that she's dealing with. Andrade, Lemos, Hill, Yan. Like, she is fighting the best of the best in this weight class right now and finding out the hard way. Now, Lupita Godinez, I struggle with Lupi, Liam. I really do. 12-4, 30 years old, and another one who I feel like, even though she was on a 4-fight win streak, she just hasn't quite hit my expectations of her. You know, 2 of those wins came via very close, greasy split decision. And I feel like the book has been written on how to beat her. She's the opposite of her opponent here in Mackenzie Dern. Lupi has good, solid boxing, and she's really great when she does that. She's got decent pop in her hands, decent power, and she's a really good wrestler. Her offensive wrestling is solid, but she refuses to use it. There's a lot of times where you're praying Lupi will get out there and take somebody down, and instead she'll want to jab and stick and move and try to strike them instead, and that'll lead her to lose money. The amount of times Lupi has dropped the ball, minus 285 against Jessica Panay, minus 220 against, or 225 against Luana Carolina, minus 360 against my girl Angie Hill, and then minus 230 over Verna Jandiroba in her last fight. Guys, Verna won that fight striking. She's a world-class grappler, and she outstruck Lupi. Why? Because Lupi's tiny. She's got little T-Rex arms, and she has no idea how to get her way around a jab. So if she can't take you down, you know, in Verna's case, very difficult to do. Maybe not something you want to do in the first place. But if you can't get around that lead arm, Lupi just didn't have an answer. And that's been the same struggle with Carolina, the range. Hill, the range. Panay, someone who really has no physicality whatsoever. She's long, she's lanky, she'll keep you at distance. Mackenzie Dern has a 2-inch height and reach advantage in this spot, Liam. And for that alone, I kind of feel like she's got a very clear and easy path to victory. If she just works that boxing that she's been working so hard on and willing to work with Amanda Lemos on, like, she'll go out there and strike with Lemos. I don't think she's afraid to strike with Lupi. All she's got to do is pump out a jab and keep the distance. And then, frankly, I think Dern may be more dangerous when she does eventually close the distance, because she will climb you like a fucking tree. You know, in her fight, when she fought Tisha Torres, she won one of those rounds because the second they clinched up, she zipped around and took her back and jumped on her and made her carry Dern's weight the rest of the round. So I think she can kind of nullify Lupi Godinez, but it all comes down to game plan, man. Lupi is not a big favorite in this spot. In fact, she is an ever so slight underdog. You have got minus 130 on Dern and plus 110 on Lupi Godinez. So I can understand the argument of buying low on Lupi. She's disappointed as a favorite, so take a stab on her as a dog, because maybe that's when she finally shows up when people have low expectations for her. However, I kind of think this is a pretty decent spot for Dern to be the one who gets kind of back on track. Close fight, women's MMA, not sold, but I think it's Dern, man. What are you seeing here?
Brother, I'm going to go ahead and agree with you.
Let's go. That's my favorite thing, Liam. I got to tell you, that's my favorite thing in the world. Not when you agree with me, I feel like I'm going to have a good night. It makes me feel all warm.
Prayers up, brother.
Yes. When somebody way smarter than me says I'm right.
Hey, never that, my man. But I'll try and work it out with you together. I mean, first of all, I look at the common opponents, right? Verna Jandiroba beat Lupita Godinez. Angela Hill beat Lupita Godinez. These are 2 women that Mackenzie Dern beat. And when you look back at it, why did she beat Verna Jandiroba? I've mentioned before, the only way to beat Verna Jandiroba to this point that we've seen in MMA is to have better wrestling or grappling, right? Carla Esparza, what's her name? Golly, Amanda Hebas, right? Who's world-class in jiu-jitsu and judo. And then Mackenzie Dern. jiu-jitsu world champion. Those are the 3 people that ever beat Verna. That's why I said I thought she was going to beat Amanda Lemos recently, right? It's like, she's not better at jiu-jitsu. She's not better at wrestling. Those are the 2 things you have to be better at. And I honestly thought
I just never thought she'd pull
give her an
guillotine,
honest
Liam.
run. What's that?
I just thought she was smart enough not to pull guillotine. I bet Lemos because I thought she was smart enough to go, can't out wrestle her, can't submit her, punch her in the face. Because that's what she did against Dern. But of course she comes out and jumps Gilly. Never mind. Anyway, I lost another bet. It is what it is.
She's all offense. That's the Amanda Lemos story, in my opinion. And I had said, because I didn't bet anything on the Verna fight, to be clear, right? I didn't think there was tremendous value. I just thought that she was going to win by submission in the first 3 rounds, because I was like, if you look back, the finishing sequence against Andrade is unforgivable, right? It just is. I bet Andrade by sub there. That was comical. I literally was laughing at home. I was like, ha, ha, ha. Like, I couldn't believe it, dude, because you know that doesn't work in a jiu-jitsu class in your local gym, right?
No.
You try and get somebody standing like that, they're going to push away. They're going to try and fall to the ground. You're not getting that.
It's hard to finish an arm triangle from top sometimes. Like, you could be on top of somebody with your body weight and still can't get an arm triangle sometimes. Like, to get it standing like that is frankly hilarious.
And I can say from experience, dude, I actually tried in a match in live competition to jump that move on somebody, and it starts getting exhausting for you. I think I could have finished it if I had known that the opponent was getting uncomfortable. Like, their face was turning purple. They were starting to get like the long neck, trying to like get away from it. But I didn't know this. So meanwhile, I'm squeezing so hard, and I was like, I'm getting exhausted. I'm forgetting about this guard stuff and tripping him to the ground. Ended up being a big, tactical mistake for me. But in any case, you got the cage. It changes the dynamic. When you're looking at Lupita Godinez, her grappling, her wrestling seems to be a 7-minute endeavor, right? That's about when she's effective in a fight with her wrestling and grappling. And beyond that, even average women start to kind of shut down her game, which I find a little bit disappointing, right? And if you don't believe me, let's go back and look at the record where Luana Carolina, she took that fight. It was like a 10-day turnaround or something. It was very quick. Hey, tough sledding there. But Luana Carolina seemed like an exploitable opponent. Hey, go out there. She showed the path, in the first round, right? Take her down, get on top, get to good positions. She couldn't maintain it. She couldn't sustain it. She couldn't continue to do it. When you saw her exchange in the wrestling and grappling with Verna, what happened? She made too many mistakes. She had too many holes in her game. Verna kept finding that, hey, you want to exchange leg locks? Let's find out. I'll get on top. And step by step, position by position, she got audited in a lot of these fights where she doesn't know the next move to do. She doesn't know the next right step. It's a lot of physicality. It's a lot of, I'm going to hit hard. I'm going to try and do these things. So that, I think, is her path. Keep the distance, throw some big hard punches, try and win a 15-minute decision or knock out Mackenzie Dern standing. Because I do think if they engage in the grappling, I favor Dern heavily because I think she's more technical, more tactical. She's preparing for a match with a much better grappler than anything Lupi's ever accomplished, with all due respect. And when you look at Lupi, what she brings to the table, a lot of it is strength and physicality. You mentioned the fact that Panay was able to take her back, get on top of her. Was that because she's strong and physical like Lupi? No, she was old at the time. She was on the back 9 of her career, I think off of a multi-year suspension for whatever the hell she did. It's a crazy one. Look into that. But in any case, when you see her just getting, power bombs as her aggressive offense and then still losing the decision because she can't maintain position, she can't maintain offense for 15 full minutes in a coherent way, I understand why she's the underdog here. And I do think what is she specifically much better than Mackenzie Dern at? Because I guess you could say boxing, but I think that that's somewhat competitive. And I think Mackenzie Dern has some power in her hands. And then I think if you say wrestling, yeah, probably. But is that an asset here? Is she she'd have to use that, I think, as a defensive tool more than an offensive tool here. I don't think her grappling is safe enough to just take her down, stay on top. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm proven wrong in that regard, but I haven't seen that, in the past. Again, Verna Jandiroba was able to create a lot of exchanges that ended up negative for Lupi over the course of that contest. And by the way, she tried to wrestle with Mackenzie for a second. I'm talking about Verna. And then she went, bad idea. And then let go of it and stood back up to the feet and was like, let's try the boxing again, because she didn't want to engage with her on the ground. So just take that for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, no, I like it. Good points all the way around, and I am going to have to look up that Panay.
There's one thing I forgot, Clint. I bet Mackenzie Dern via knockout 25-1 against Angela Hill, and she beat that woman within an inch of her life. If Angela Hill was not the toughest woman on the roster, she probably would have quit 10 times in that fight. Guys, she got absolutely mugged, and she did not give up. Divorced Dern energy is a dangerous thing. Watch out.
And I think we see that coming back this week, Liam. I really do. I think divorced Dern has an opportunity to be mean again this week. Now, the thing is, Lupi also is tough. I do think that Lupi is also tough. She is also durable. She has never been finished. All 4 of her losses have been by decision, and she's also fought a decent level of competition. However, Verna by far the most dangerous of them. Tabitha Ricci couldn't hurt a fly. She's a decision machine. Elise Reed, she can be dangerous on the feet, but we know she can be completely audited in the grappling area. Cynthia Calvillo, who fell off a cliff. And as much as I love Angela Hill, until very recently, she just isn't much of a finisher, right? You could say Carnelossi probably hits really fucking hard, but again,
Angela Hill by sub hit like crack in the 80s, Clint. That absolutely hit like crack in the 80s.
I know. Yeah, I saw that actually. Shout out. I don't know if he's still here. Pepe, the man. I heard him say it, and it was one of those ones where I wasn't about to make it official. It wasn't, a bet that I thought of. It wasn't something I came up with. And I have no problem tailing people, and I give them credit, and I'll shout them out. I'll be like, hey, I bet this, I tailed it. But we're talking, it was like right before the fight started. Like we're mid-fight, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, didn't Pepe say something about the sub? And so I tossed a couple of bucks on it. That hit like crack. And plus just being an Angie Hill fan, just felt all warm and good inside watching her get that kind of a finish. Anyway, Luma Lukbunmi, another decisionator, unless she's, clawing you to death in mount with elbows. Luana Dread Carolina, she hasn't really fought anybody that's hit super hard. So I want to say it's Mackenzie Dern by decision. But if she's getting outclassed on the feet the way we have seen in the past a couple of times before, you could find yourself a mercy killing with Mackenzie Dern in this spot. Maybe a late finish, round 3, something like that. Yeah, I like Dern. I like Dern in this spot. And real quick, Streamline Gaming just has to come in here and ask the question that has been killing me since the weekend. Can we just talk about how the UFC screwed him out of both his futures? You guys, you're running bad when you have the most beautiful setup in UFC history. The UFC has been literally trying, Liam, to give Manel Kape a title shot. They want the rematch with Pantoja. It's the only interesting storyline in the division. He's an absolute star overseas, massive following. They want this guy to challenge for a title. He's here for that purpose. And then he fucks up and he misses weight, right? Like he's got a title shot in the bag. He's just got to knock out the chinniest guy in the division. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And he messes it up by missing weight. I've got Manel Kape 14-1 futures to be champion end of the year. All I need is a title shot by the end of the year. Easy, right? He fucks it up. So I look at this and I'm like, who's kind of coming out of left field? This Muhammad Mokaev kid just is making waves. 10-1. 10-1 on Muhammad Mokaev. You know what? Pantoja is literally giving shots to Steve Erceg because there's no one for him to fight in this weight class. One more good win. That's all it's going to take for Mokaev to get a title shot. They fight each other. It's a title eliminator, Liam. Winner of this fight gets a title shot. I got 14-1 and I got 10-1. If I want to hedge out on Pantoja, it's easy money. But either way, I'm in the best position you could ask for. Manel Kape breaks his fucking toe in the first round, and Mokaev wins such a boring decision that the UFC decided to cut him. Both guys lost. I lose both futures tickets, and who the hell knows if Pantoja's even going to fight at the end of the year by now, because I doubt Kape's foot is going to be healed enough for them to give him the opportunity. I'm dead in the water. That's how bad I'm running. So thank you, Streamline Gaming, for giving me the opportunity to vent my pain on that one, because I was just going to keep my mouth shut and eat that one. But yes, I am very much hurt by that result. Futures are a bitch, guys. They're an absolute bitch, especially in mixed martial arts, because last year, Sean Strickland, he wasn't even listed. He was a guy that wasn't even listed to bet on at most places, and he had the belt at the end of the year. So like MMA futures, we'll keep doing them for fun because it's a fun conversation to have when there's no fights on in January. But yeah, rough shit. Tough stuff on my side, man. All right, let's move on. Next fight up, we've got Tony El Cucuy Ferguson. He takes on Michael Chiesa, the Maverick. Bro. Liam, it's 2024, and I'm talking about Tony Ferguson again. The guy just tied BJ Penn for the longest losing streak in UFC history at 7. My God, what are we doing? I love Tony. I love him as much as the next guy. I wanted Tony versus Khabib. We all wanted it to happen. Oh, but the magic is gone. I mean, if we're looking at these guys, you know what? Let's pull a shout out Brandon Olivas, just picking a guy off of straight aura. It's still Tony. He still got it. He still got aura, if nothing else. But what a tough fight, man. Michael Chiesa is a guy, 36 years old, 3-fight losing skid himself. I've been trying to fade this guy. Like, I want to fade Michael Chiesa with everything I've got. It seems like he's really enjoying his commentator's gig. Not to blame him. You know, I would too. I don't want to get punched in the face either. But like, you run back his last couple of fights. I mean, he's been getting real inactive. He didn't fight all of 2022. He only fought once in 2023. And he got knocked out, rocked on the feet, and then choked out by Kevin Holland immediately. Like, that was just a filthy finish in that spot. Chiesa don't like getting hit, Liam. We talked about that a couple times on this episode. There's a couple guys on this card that just do not want to get punched in the face anymore. And it reminds me of, if any of you guys are old enough, Forrest Griffin, the first Ultimate Fighter. That was a guy that built his name on walking forward and eating every single punch you threw at him. And that's how he got to a title. He was just dumber and tougher than anybody else you locked him in that cage with. And then one day he couldn't take a punch anymore. Didn't have it anymore. Completely fell apart. And it happens to everybody. But Chiesa is a guy that from day one was a grappler. He never liked getting hit. Now he's running for his life when someone swings at him. I mean, I know Holland is fast and accurate and he hits hard, but guys, go back and watch that fight. It's like 2 minutes. You don't have to watch long. He is scared shitless. He is running for his life and diving on ankles from so far outside of range. Chiesa ain't got it anymore, Liam. He just does not have it. Now, Tony is 40 years old, and frankly, he looks like a senior citizen in there sometimes. Tony Ferguson is, Dan, no slander. Forrest Griffin got me into the sport. I love Forrest Griffin. I'm just saying, Father Time is undefeated, my friend. Tony, he was falling over himself, Liam. Like the Bobby Green fight, the Paddy Pimblett fight. Like there's a couple of sequences where it looks like he just gets knocked off balance a little bit. Next thing you know, he's on his back. I mean, he doesn't have the ability to stay on his feet the way that he used to. I don't know if it's because he's lost a step, his balance, or if he just still believes in that triangle choke that he's got. But he is so willing to fall over and go to the ground. It's concerning because I'm old enough to remember when Michael Chiesa won a decision over Rafael dos Anjos. Long time ago, I know, but Chiesa's a wrestler. And Tony is a jiu-jitsu player who is more than willing to lay on his back. And frankly, I think it's a real bad look to get submitted by Bobby Green in 2023 or 2024, Liam. I know Bobby's underrated sometimes. I know he's got a well-rounded skill set, but to get arm triangled by that guy, the way that happened. Bobby's a smaller 155er. Chiesa is a big dude that's been fighting up at 170 for quite some time. He outgrew 155 a long time ago. There's a size difference here. I don't know that Tony's got the kind of pop in his hands that he's going to need to hurt Chiesa to finish him. And then if he doesn't do that, I just see Chiesa getting the body lock. I just see Chiesa dragging this old man to the ground and camping out on top where it's safe. Both guys can be had via submission. We've seen both lose by submission several times now recently. Chiesa especially, 5 losses by sub. You run this thing back a couple of years ago, and maybe I'd take the stab on Tony. I don't know if I can get there. I want to, Liam. I want to. I desperately want to bet Tony Ferguson. I desperately want to bet Michael Chiesa. I want to see Tony get a win, man, and ride off into the sunset. Give me a reason to, because I want to. I just think it's Chiesa via very boring decision, round 2, round 3 sub maybe, if Tony's really lost a step, more so than it looks like he has. I can see a finish coming from Michael Chiesa. What do you make of this one, man?
I'll be frank. I've had a pretty good read on Michael Chiesa fights over the years, and I bet him against Neil Magny when they squared off. I think that was a 5-round fight. I think he won it 3 rounds to 2. He was a plus 100 1-800 underdog. Pretty close fight ultimately, but just like you said, body lock, he's pretty consistent looking for it, gets the takedowns in that fight, hangs out on top. But not submitting a guy like Neil Magny, I actually think is like a black mark against his career.
Yeah.
When you just look at the other guys that have submitted Neil Magny and treated him like he didn't exist on bottom, and I don't mean to be disrespectful or dismissive. I'm talking about top level welterweights, but I called Shavkat Lakhmonov against Neil Magny because I was like, if he wants to submit him in round 1, he will. If he wants to do it in round 2, he will. If he wants to do it in round 3, he will. That's what you saw in that fight. He just dominated him physically in every position until the fight was over. And when you think about a guy like Chiesa, he's a guy that likes a comfortable fight. He likes a fight where he can go out there and dominate easily. And even the RDA fight, what is RDA? If not a former 155 or a tweener at best, a guy that at 170 needed to rely on the fact that he's extremely skilled and tough and willing to go out there and keep pushing through cardio deficits and other things. But he was always undersized. You look at any of his fights at 170, he looked much smaller than his opponents. And I think that you look at Michael Chiesa, he's a guy who used to fight at 155, moved up to 170, so he didn't have to cut as much weight. But to your point, Clint, he's not a very active fighter. He's more active on the desk, on commentary shows, on analysis than he is inside of the octagon. And when we see Michael Chiesa in there, I think he's a very uncomfortable fighter. I think that's always been the case. He got, out wrestled by Sean Brady, who he has a size advantage over, who he landed some good shots in the boxing, but he never really had his confidence in the grappling in that fight. So he got summarily out grappled basically in that fight, but he was able to outland him on the strike. So he felt good about himself. He still lost the fight and he was very content, I felt like, in that performance. Vicente Luque has been on hard times. Everybody wants to shit on the man, talk about how bad he is at fighting. What a bum. He's completely fallen off. Okay, maybe all that's true, but it wasn't that long ago that he gave up every bad position to Michael Chiesa that Michael Chiesa could have possibly wanted. Michael Chiesa has the back in round 1. He's working for a rear naked choke. He loses position, then frustrated with himself, he falls over the top looking for a triangle and gets finished literally 10 seconds later. Like, Michael Chiesa, guys, has what I call self-immolation tendencies. He lights himself on fire. If things are going poorly, he sticks his head in a bad choke and he gets finished. And so I do think there is a chance that Tony Ferguson can win this fight. I think when you look at what has been happening to Tony Ferguson lately, guys that are younger, smarter, go out there and they kick his legs. They punt the shit out of them. When you're old, when you're washed, your legs are gone. And I think that if Michael Chiesa has a smart game plan and good coaches, what he will do in this fight is be annoying, be boring, poke him in the shoulder, kick him in the legs a bunch of times, get him off of his base, and then start trying to go for takedowns, which he could probably get. But I don't think of Michael Chiesa as a very sophisticated striker. A lot of times he likes to use his hands, if anything, then grab a hold of somebody. And by the way, guys, if there's 2 things Tony Ferguson feels comfortable doing, it's grappling and boxing. So he will go out there and comfortably box and grapple with anybody. It's when you punt him in the face or when you exhaust him in a higher paced fight than he's comfortable doing at this age that you can get him out of there. By the way, we've had guys like Beneil Dariush, Charles Oliveira on top of him, stretch him every which way but loose, try and rip his leg off. He doesn't give up very easily, right? He'd rather go, and let his leg half tear than give up the fight. And that should have probably been a scream, submission. They didn't call it. My man keeps fighting to the bitter end there against good grapplers, guys that are, in my humble opinion, clearly better than Michael Chiesa. So it's like brown belt versus brown belt, washed guy versus washed guy. The only difference is Tony's been a little bit more active. His striking is poor. Michael Chiesa's literally never stopped somebody with strikes. By the way, here's the other thing I want to mention. You have to look at what strikes somebody lands and do they translate? Can they, find these strikes on their opponent? Tony Ferguson is prolific with the uppercuts. If you go back and watch any of his fights, the biggest shots he lands, Justin Gaethje, he literally lands the Marge Simpson from the side, bus driver uppercut, right? And
that
God
meme makes me think of Tony.
And you look at the most recent fight. Kevin Holland went out there knowing full well that Michael Chiesa will shoot himself into a bad Darce eventually, and he just started holding him back and short uppercuts right up the middle. And Michael Chiesa was visibly uncomfortable. He did not like getting hit by any of them. He reacted poorly, tried to circle away, tried to shoot a bad takedown from too far out. If you know a Darce choke, I pick you to beat Michael Chiesa. Tony knows the Darce choke. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. That is fair. And I kind of left that one off the docket, Liam, because I've heard you break down a fight or two in my time, and I kind of knew the Darce call was coming here on this one. Guys, I mentioned Chiesa's run here recently. 3-fight skid, very, very, very inactive. And during that run, 2 of those losses via finish. Not one, but both of them were by sub, and not one, but both of those submissions were via Darce. So Chiesa absolutely has a problem defending the Darce choke. And who was it in the chat? Somebody said the Darce Knight rises. And I absolutely love it. Tony
How
Ferguson
about Jorge Masvidal, by the way? Yeah, the prolific submission artist, Jorge Masvidal, put him in a Darce choke. He was like, thanks anyways. I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's bad times. Bad times there. Dude is beating people in YouTube boxing these days. No, I like Tony. And you know what, guys? I got to shout out my guy, Keg. I tell you guys, between my boys Razor Sharp Picks and Nuke the House, my guy Keg, two sharpest bettors I've ever met in my life. They keep me profitable in non-MMA sports, and Keg actually knows a damn thing or two about MMA. We're going to get him back on the pod sometime soon. He's taking the stab on Tony as well this week. And this fight could come down to simply who wants it more, Liam. I mean, Darce choke aside, who wants it? I think Tony wants it. I really think Tony wants it more than Chiesa does at this point. What is Chiesa even fighting for this week? Does he just want to get one more win before he hangs it up, go out on top? Does he have to stay active for the commentary job, or are they making him take fights to keep him on the desk for a little bit as a prerequisite? Does he think he's still got a shot at the title? I know it's not that one, but does he have the Anthony Smith level of delusion to think he's still competitive? I do not know why he is fighting this week. And I know Tony wants to get his hand raised. So, guys, I said last week I thought I was going to donate at least one unit on Curtis Razor Blades. Talked myself right out of that one. Came to grips with the fact that I did not want to lose a unit on Curtis Blades this week. Dodged a bullet. And here I am going, I think I'm going to donate a unit on Tony Ferguson for old time's sake, right? This is a winnable fight. It's not against the current seeded champion. It's not against the guy who's going to be fighting John Jones, potentially in the next year. This is a fellow washed fighter who maybe doesn't want to be in the octagon on Saturday. I kind of think he's going to lose, but this number is very, very, very wide. At plus 440, I might throw a poke on Tony Ferguson on Saturday.
I just think long term, if you're laying minus 600 with Michael Chiesa, you will not make money betting MMA. And that's how I feel. But God bless, everybody does it their own way. I never tell you what to bet. I just tell you what I'm planning on betting. And I haven't bet anything on this fight yet, but I mean, at plus 450, it's obvious Tony Ferguson or pass for me. And by the way, last time out, I bet Pimblett inside the distance. I bet Pimblett KO 1. I bet Pimblett KO. Beautiful. All of those were good bets, and it just didn't come through for me. But when you look at this matchup, who would I take straight up between Paddy Pimblett and Michael Chiesa? Probably Paddy.
It's got to be Paddy
inside the distance in round one. He knows a Darce choke too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Paddy would snap his neck. Absolutely. But yeah, man, I made the mistake of parlaying Molly McCann last week in a fight that was thin margins that she could have won, and I thought she should have won. But she came out with a poor game plan and she found a way to lose it. And that's who you're not supposed to parlay at big chalk prices. That is Michael Chiesa this week. He might win. But minus 600 is absolute insanity, and it's a bad process. So, yeah, dog or pass from a betting perspective. I think at the end of the day, for anybody keeping record of my picks, which I don't know why you would, but there are people out there that do. I will pick Chiesa to go ahead and get the win. But the bet is going to be Ferguson, if anything. All right, guys, we got 3 more fights to talk about. The 3 most exciting fights on this card. I'm very pumped up here for this one. Next up, Marlon Chito Vera takes on Dieguez Figueiredo, the God of War. And the real God of War is Benoit Saint-Denis, guys. But that's okay. That's okay. We'll let him get away with it. He had gold wrapped around his waist at one point. He can have that name. Guys, I love this fight so much. We talk about what have you done for me lately in MMA, Liam, and I think this is just a beautiful example of it. Deiveson Figueiredo had such an amazing run down a weight class as the champion until he ran into my favorite Lego-loving Mexican. And then he had to take a break. A couple fights with Brandon Moreno will do that to you, apparently. Deiveson had to step away for the sake of his health, for his mentality, for his durability. He had to take a little bit of a break. Moves up in weight, and you know what? It has served him well. Since coming up to 135 pounds, Deiveson Figueiredo is 2-0 at 135 pounds. and he ground out Rob Font, and he just submitted Cody Garbrandt. Very, very impressive what he was able to do to Cody Garbrandt. But guys, I kind of think there's a little bit of Wolves tickets going on here. Davison is a guy who was a guillotine jumper. You know, he was an incredible striker that would hit you with everything he's got. He was a physical force down at 125 pounds. He was not a wrestler. You know, he was never really a guy that grinded on people. And he's pulling an Andrei Arlovsky late in his career, and he is shifting gears. And now he's trying to use physicality and wrestling and control in a way that he really never did before. And frankly, I'm not sold, Liam. I just think it's against his nature. It's not what he was good at. It's not what he was built for. It's good that he has found a way to win later on in his career. But I do not think Davison Figueiredo double-legging people is going to lead him to a title. I don't believe that's where his skill set lies. I don't believe that's where his ability is world-class. And he's taking on Marlon Chito Vera, a guy who is very, very much at home at 135 pounds and couldn't make 125 as if his life depended on it. Chito is a guy who's coming off a title shot loss to Sean O'Malley. Obviously, you guys know all about that, but he's tough as freaking nails, man. Only the best guys in this division are beating him. Song Yudong, Jose Aldo, a split to Sandhagen, which admittedly probably shouldn't have been a split. And then the champ, right? Sean O'Malley. But he starts a little slow, downloads a little bit of information, and then he turns up in rounds 2 and 3 and does nothing but come forward, does not take a backward step. And he hurts people, Liam. I've never seen this guy cut. I've never seen this guy bruised. After absorbing 200 significant strikes, he looks the same as he did in his pre-fight pictures, except his hair's a little messed up. It's unreal, the durability of Marlon Vera. And frankly, I don't think Davison Figueiredo has that same quality anymore. You know, the way that he was running away from shots against Brandon Moreno in that final title fight, he wanted nothing to do with a brawl those last couple of fights with Moreno, and that was down at 125 pounds. There was this weird moment, Liam, in the Cody Garbrandt fight. Early on, Cody comes forward and he lands just a very small shot on Davison Figueiredo. And Davison crumples to the ground. Now, it looks like he kind of saves it, rolls to his hip, and then looks like he's going to play guard. I think they may have even ruled that a slip almost. But I went back and I watched that sequence like 7-8 times because I was like, what was that? I think he's another guy that doesn't want to get hit anymore, Liam. I believe Cody Garbrandt caught him and Davison went, oh, shit. And he went to the ground immediately because he wanted nothing to do with it on the feet. And round 2 starts. What does he do? He immediately drags this fight to the mat. No more standing with this guy. He shifted gears immediately. Guys, Chito Vera may not be the most technical fighter we have ever seen in the UFC, but what he is he's a tough son of a bitch. And he's incredibly skilled on the ground. Now, that's been one of my biggest issues with this man is that he's got an advantage over a lot of people grappling and just straight up refuses to use it. But it's a deterrent. Liam, you do not want to grapple with Marlon Vera because people forget how dangerous he is down there. He also has a 70% takedown defense, which is kind of the bar for me. You know, you see people with under 70% and it's like, oh, they can get taken down. That's a path to victory. 70% and above, though, that's where it's a tall order. It's not as easy to take somebody down when they've got a UFC career with a 70% takedown defense rating. I don't know that D1 Davison is going to be able to take down Marlon Chito Vera on Saturday, Liam. And when they are standing, Vera's going to be the naturally larger fighter. He's going to hit harder, and I think he's got more hate in his heart at this point in his life. I believe that Vera is going to start coming forward and Davison is going to have to start taking steps backwards. I think the wrong fighter is favored here. And at worst case scenario, this should be a pick'em price tag. Recency bias is a bitch. Guys were out here ready to lay it with Marlon Vera against guys like Sandhagen and O'Malley. But now you've got a 135er coming, or 125er, excuse me, coming up, and they're thinking this guy deserves to be a favorite. No. Link Memorial Dog of the Week, my friends. Can we make it 3-4-3? Last week, we cashed in big with my boy Belal Muhammad at plus 210. And that got us on a run here for these Link Memorial Dog of the Week bets. Actually, that is 3 in a row. I apologize. Belal was 3. Can we make it 4? Can we make it 4 in a row for the Dog of the Week? It's Marlon Chito Vera at plus money. I think the line is moving the wrong way, Liam, and I would not be shocked at a round 3 finish from this guy when Davison realizes he's in there with the wrong dude that hits harder and wants it more.
You know something, Clint? We're going to tend to largely agree on this one as well. And
Let's
it's not
fucking
because I
go.
don't respect Davison Figueiredo. It's just because of his age for the division, right? He's 36 years of age. He's quite up there. He's had a lot of accomplishments, right? And when you look at hunger, I always think that that's a factor that people don't consider, right? Motivation. How much does somebody want it? Obviously, he moved to a different weight class because it's more comfortable for his lifestyle, right? At 125 requires him to basically like stop eating, right? Just like really emaciate himself. It's a very brutal cut. At 135, it's a lot more comfortable. But when you fight Rob Font, a guy who's been hanging around the top of the division, mostly due to toughness, right? When you see some of the skills get audited fight over fight, it's a little tough for him. He can land good output with the hands. He's got good length, but you just see him fall apart in extended fights. You see him get hit, hurt, damaged a lot. He's just tougher than an old leather boot, as you said, right? He's a guy that's willing to take that damage and make it to the end of the final bell, but really he gets brutalized in a lot of these hard fights, whether that's Chito dropping him every which way but loose, almost knocked him out of the octagon a few times, or on the other side where he lost to Davison Figueiredo just cleanly in the striking. And when I'm thinking about, how you look at Davison Figueiredo, he can wrestle. He could go out there and take people down a little bit. He could get to the back. Cody Garbrandt's a guy who hasn't really been tested in the wrestling and the grappling very often. We saw, he left us wanting more, right? But I think a lot of people had been down on Garbrandt already. They thought that he's not really a guy who's worthy or relevant. And you look at a guy like Chito Vera, he's coming off a brutal, beatdown. So that's the real danger factor for him, is coming off of a title fight. Oftentimes we see that as a potential letdown spot, but it's not like he's a minus 200 favorite like they often are coming off of a title fight. He's the plus money underdog. So I think that's a little different. But the other thing is, you just want to see him respond with the same level of confidence, right? He's a guy that oftentimes has been, I'm going to come forward no matter what. I'm going to kill you no matter what. I'm going to get in your face. I'm going to keep pushing. And you just wonder, after you get that hellacious beating, will you still push the same way? I think we know that Chito has gotten his ass whooped before, right? You could go back to earlier in his UFC career. He was young. He was inexperienced. He had virtually no skill, and he got his ass whooped a couple of times, and he kept fighting. He kept pushing. I think of the Davy Grant fight, right? Davy Grant went out there and whooped his ass back in the day. Then they rematched. They ran it back. And he whooped Davy's ass a little bit, right? He beat him up along the way, did a lot of damage to him as well. So I think of a guy like Chito, damaging fighter, not a guy that's easy to put away, especially. That's the most important factor to consider, because Jose Aldo, the great Jose Aldo, is not known for his submission game, but he is a very good jiu-jitsu practitioner. He keeps that in his back pocket. And guys, he was starting to get messed up by Chito in round 3, and he said, F all this, young man. I'm putting you in a body triangle, holding on for dear life, and that's the end of the fight. I bet Jose Aldo, I said, thank you, sir. Veteran lesson. But I also realized in that moment, I was like, this guy Chito Vera, till the bitter end, is going to fight hard. Jose Aldo, in my humble opinion, is a better champion even than Davison Figueiredo. A great champion, a great fighter. But you look at how Chito managed that fight. He was very close. Sean O'Malley right now is the goods in the division. He was able to get one over on him. But unlike all these other guys that he's plastering, knocking out, brutalizing, finishing them, he was able to make it the distance. He was able to find a way to wade through that damage, have a round, have a moment against O'Malley, land some decent shots late. So I think of Chito Vera as a guy who's tough, durable, wants to be there. And right now, guys, his stock is down. He's got a lot to prove. He was really embarrassed by his last fight. He got his ass whooped. And I think that in this fight, he's got a lot to come back and earn. So for me, Chito Vera is the side, 31 years of age, younger fighter, arguably closer to his athletic prime, versus a guy who stocks at an all-time high from beating a former champion who's been on a very rough run recently, and then beating Rob Font, who is a common opponent that they both beat the shit out of.
Let's fucking go, Liam. Always trust your balls, folks. There we go. We're agreeing on this underdog. I love it. I think the pick'em price tag was perfect. I think plus money is a gift. It's Cheeto season, baby. I'll take the height. I'll take the reach. I'll take the killer instinct. I'll take the durability and the hunger. Let's freaking go. I love it. All right, guys. Co-main event time. It is Shara Bullet Magomedov, and he takes on Mikhail Oleg. Really, Zelda? Really now? Okay. Shara Bullet takes on Mikhail Lord Oleksiejczuk, and Zelda has an opinion here on this fight, guys. We have got an interesting spot where, okay, you made your point. Zelda, Josh. He's fresh off the boat making a movie in Hollywood. Shara got his way over there to be, you know what, it's funny, I saw screenshots of it, and I thought they were going to make him like a Bond villain. But he looks like he's in Red Dead Redemption. Like he's got like a cowboy hat on. I don't know, not what I expected. Anyway, Shara, guys, you know what, Liam? No more pomp and circumstance. I'm not sold. Shara's last fight showed me I can fade this guy. Like I saw a man against Anthony Tricoli get walked down and punched in the face with a couple of right hands. Somebody who had not come over on short notice, somebody with a decent gas tank, probably would have been able to do more damage in that spot. I mean, he's really athletic, lots of footwork, crazy arsenal of spinning kicks, not a lot of them overly effective. He does do a good job of setting up big stuff. He hits hard enough, right? He finishes a lot of people, quite obviously. Decent gas tank, but his wrestling is suspect, and I think that got shown in the Tricoli fight. He had one of the most egregious fence grabs. Liam, you were talking about how they just don't penalize people ever anymore. He should have been on his back in round 2, and that could have swayed the entire fight against Tricoli, but they let him get away with an egregious fence grab and kept the fight on the feet instead. So this guy is not a complete product at this point. This guy is not some world beater, but they are framing him as that. And on top of that, they can't get him into the States, so they're only letting him fight overseas because that's the only place they can get him booked for these types of opportunities. I am not sold whatsoever on Shara, and I was really hoping for an opportunity to fade him. The only issue that I have is that it's Mikhail Oleksiejczuk in this spot, Liam. He is making a real quick turnaround, way too fast of a turnaround. 1-3 in his last 4, and he has been finished in the first round more times than I can count. Two of his last 3 fights, he's been finished in the first round. But the guys he's been finished by, you got to look at those names. Kevin Holland, Michel Pereira, and Caio Borralho. Those are not bad guys to be taking L's to, right? It is a little concerning that he lost the Chidi Njokuani win. He got brutally hurt right before he pulled off the finish. So there is some suspect as far as his durability concerns and things of that nature. But a lot of these losses are coming by sub. It's because he's got a huge deficiency in his grappling. He dropped Kevin Holland in the first round and then fell into Zelda. You are really ruining my breakdown now. Could you shut up? I'm going to hand this off to Liam sooner than later. She never keeps barking this hard and this long. Sorry, guys. He just kind of fell into an armbar against Kevin Holland. But my concern is there's no way that arm is healthy. Like Holland has him in the armbar and he should tap, but he doesn't. And Holland looks at him and he goes, bro, you should tap. And he doesn't. So Holland goes, okay. And then he like full hips into that arm and like just completely hyperextends the right arm of Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. That arm has to be compromised, Liam. There's no way in like 2 months his right arm is feeling right. Now, it's a good thing that his power arm is actually his left. He hits hardest with his left hand. So I think he's going in here going, you know what? Not really worried about the right hand anyway, right? I'm going to throw the left one. But it's a spot where if Shara's not going to take this guy down, if Shara's not going to look for subs, he doesn't have a sub on his record. Is it as easy as these last couple of guys have had it? Yeah, maybe he's a little soft to the body and he can hurt him and knock him out. But I also don't think Shara's perfect. I think Shara struggles when you put him on his back foot. We've seen that he doesn't like pressure coming at him. And Mikhail actually can dump some people on their ass. And when he does that, his ground and pound is so underrated. People don't talk about Oleksiejczuk's ground and pound. He destroyed Chidi with like 3 punches the second that he got him down there. If Oleksiejczuk comes out here grappling, Shara might be fucked, Liam. I mean, I'm going to pick Shara Magomedov to win the fight because the UFC is booking this with the purpose of turning around a broken fighter really quickly and getting him in there to get Shara a win. I know it. Guys, trust me. I understand the narrative here. The UFC is looking to get Magomedov a win in this spot. But I can see paths to victory for Mikhail. It's just a real shitty spot for him, especially coming off that real quick finish where he's probably compromised coming into this fight. It's dog or pass for me with this betting line. Again, Shara probably wins, guys, but I can't stomach laying minus 250, minus 260 on a guy that's taken the clean punches that I've seen him take, on a guy that has the grappling deficiencies that we've seen, taking on a guy who's got the UFC caliber experience that he does. Shara's fought nobody. This is a prove it to me spot. He probably wins. That's a long way of saying I'm passing. Go ahead, Liam. What do you got here?
Fair play, brother. Yeah, I think Michal Oleksiejczuk stinks, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I think he's a fun fighter. I just don't think he's very good at anything, right? He kind of is like a guy that could throw hard punches, but his jiu-jitsu is dreadful, right? He's not good. You're getting armbarred in the first round of a UFC fight in the men's division. It's pretty tough. It's a pretty tough look in this day and age, in my humble opinion. And when you look at a guy like Michal Oleksiejczuk, the thing that makes this more interesting on paper is like he's just a submission liability. I said it going into his last fight. I had a Holland by sub in that fight as well. So I was happy with how that turned out. But when you look, Oleksiejczuk's just a mark for the sub. Like anybody that tries to take him down and submit him has had a lot of success there. So I would not be surprised personally if Shara gets his first sub this weekend. It's like feeding him an opportunity to do so. That being said, I don't think he's a good grappler. I've mentioned before, I'm not a guy that's sold on Shara as like a great talent or, some future of the division or anything like that. But I agree with you that the reason they probably re-signed Michal Oleksiejczuk in this spot is to get him killed here and then never sign him again. And I think that he's kind of that understanding as well. From what it seemed like to me, he's like, yeah, I'll take the fight. If it goes my way, great. If it doesn't, I'll retire and move on with my life. And that's not a guy I typically like to bet on. So
that's not a great attitude.
Shara, right? If Shara loses this fight, what happens? He fights another time in the UFC. They can get a ROI. Chael Sonnen talks about this. This is a simple concept, but understand it. It's a business of making money. They can get more money if Shara does well because they're going to keep him around. They probably don't care if Michal Oleksiejczuk lives or dies at this point in his career. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful. It's a cutthroat business. They're not very nice, right? They just cut Nate Maness 5-2. You think Oleksiejczuk off a million losses where he just gets finished every time? That's basically what they like about him. They're like, he's a consistent loser. We know that he's going to lose and get finished. And it's like, that I think is what you can probably expect here. And by the way, he's had a couple very close wins as well. He hasn't looked sensational in a lot of his wins. When he does look good, like you said, it's getting on top and bludgeoning somebody. Maybe he could do that here. I just think Nurmagomedov will be tough in those situations. I think his biggest vulnerability is grappling. And I think this guy can't grapple his way out of a paper bag.
That's fair. That is absolutely fair. And like I said, I'm picking Shara, guys. I understand I'm picking it. It's one of those guys that in my core, I'm like, I have the urge to fade. You know what I mean?
It's a long-term fade. I do agree with that for sure.
Yeah. So I have a tendency, Liam, of jumping the gun. I get too early to these fades. I take the shot, one or two fights a little too early. And that's kind of what my soul is telling me to do here. So we're going to go ahead and say Shara Bullet wins the fight and leave it at that. I will keep my money in my pockets and I'm not going to war with busted Oleksiejczuk in this spot. The only time, guys, I've ever bet a guy going into a fight with one arm was TJ Dillashaw when he hit it from the public and nobody had any idea that shoulder was fucked. That's the one time I've bet on a one-armed man going into a fight. I'm not dumb enough to bet on a one-armed guy going into this fight here in Abu Dhabi. All right, main event time, everybody. Let's freaking go. We got Corey Sandhagen take on Umar Nurmagomedov. And Liam, we talked ever so briefly about futures bets earlier, and I got one in my back pocket. I still got one that's live. I've got Umar Nurmagomedov to be the champion by the end of the year, Liam. It's in my pocket. We have got the Sphere booked. Sean O'Malley is taking my guy Merab on in the Sphere, and this fight is happening this weekend. All I need is Umar to get on by Corey Sandhagen, and I am live at 8-1 for this man to be champion at the end of 2024. Big end of year card. I can see it now. The UFC puts their Russian monster on the card. Championship shit, co-main event underneath a John Jones. It just sounds all so perfect to me, but he's got to win on Saturday. And you know what, Liam? I think he's gonna. Guys, I have not made very many max bets in my life. I've made a lot of bets, frankly, and I probably should do, less bets in general and more of these confident max style bets. But you guys know all about the 7-unit max bet at this point in time. Let me go ahead and pull the numbers up here for you, because whenever I do make a max bet, the record is 8-3, Liam. 8-3. And 2 of those losses were Alex Pereira, by the way. So I rarely lose these max bets when I make them. And I had a nice little sexy parlay weeks in advance of Peyton Talbot. Boy, did that number shoot out of control after I bet it. And Umar Nurmagomedov. 7 units to win 4 coming into this fight. So I just get to go ahead and sit back, relax, and hope my boy can get it done. But this number is climbing. Umar's been sitting around 225, 250, and now we're up in the threes, Liam. The money's starting to come in. And I can't tell you how many people I see out there going, Corey Sandhagen's easy money. Easy money. And the bookies are going, great. Here's more plus. Here, we'll make that number bigger for you. Come on in. Come on, give me that plus money. Oh, shut up, Bo. You don't know what you're talking about. So we have got a fight that I've been waiting for a long, long time, Liam. Umar Nurmagomedov is the future king of this weight class, and I can't wait for this fight because I've seen a lot of ways that Corey Sandhagen can be beat. I do not want to be disrespectful of the guy's skill set, but I think Umar Nurmagomedov is probably the worst case scenario fight for him. This guy hasn't fought very many high-level grapplers, busted TJ Dillashaw, got 8 minutes of control time on him. He lost extremely quickly to Aljamain Sterling, and that was the last real grappler that he faced. You know, he won that fight with Song Yadong, and it was 2-2 going into round 5. And it was stopped due to a cut where Song Yadong had all the momentum. Now, we don't know how that fight will end, Liam. We do not know how that fight ends.
Sandhagen KO plus 450 is over here like, yes!
Beautiful. I
got lucky as hell on that one, no lie.
I cried a little. I had some Song Yadong money in that spot, and I was foaming at the mouth because I thought that Song had all the momentum going into round 5. So I couldn't wait for that 5th round. Anyway, Song Yadong is maybe the most public underdog in this type of spot we've ever seen. 3-fight win streak. And Rob Font, Marlon Vera, Song Yadong, he's great at striking. He's great at range. He knows what he's doing on the feet. He's actually got, some nasty little submissions when he finds his opportunities there on the ground. But frankly, I think physically he's not strong enough at this weight class for some of these more high-powered grapplers. I think it's a similar to Sean O'Malley type of situation. And if some of these guys get their mitts on them, they'll be able to drag them down to the ground and control them in those kinds of positions. And what are the Nurmagomedovs known for? This kid is 28 years old. He's been training with the two best Nurmagomedovs you've ever seen, or Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev, his entire life. This guy is the future. He's 28. He's 17-0. He's got a wealth of experience. And people want to go back and talk about the Beksat Akman fight where he got clocked in round 1 and got caught. And they're, oh, that's it. That's it. He got hurt. He got hurt to a debutante, somebody I've never heard of. Guys, Beksat's a fucking monster. He's 11-2, and wait until he fights again. This Kazakhstani is going to show some people what he's made of. He took his UFC jumping, Liam. I talked about that before. The UFC will sign a guy. They'll take a terrible fight on short notice, lose, and then go from there. And that's exactly what Beksat did. He had Umar Nurmagomedov hurt in that first round. Frankly, I think Beksat might be more dangerous on the feet than Corey Sandhagen is. Bold claim, I know, but I actually think that's potentially possible. We'll see. We'll see in Beksat's next couple of fights. But I think he's going to be a problem in this weight class. So Umar will have every opportunity to come out here and bully Corey Sandhagen around this cage, drag him to the floor, and frankly, I think he opens up some eyes on Saturday, Liam. I fully expect Umar to win this fight. I think he's going to do it dominantly. I think he's going to finish. I think Umar Nurmagomedov is going to submit Corey Sandhagen, and he's going to make a whole lot of people sad on Saturday. He'll make me exceptionally happy because that kind of a statement win will for sure make him number 1 in line for the next title shot, and hopefully I can get there by the end of the year. That's what's up. Umar Nurmagomedov season. Max bet is anchored on him, and I just got to get his hand raised on Saturday. What do you like here, Liam?
Hey, fair play, brother. I think you have done your job in terms of getting ahead of the Umar Nurmagomedov team. I do think he's going to be a popular side this week. I can understand why people will play Corey as well. I think Corey has like a large contingency among the MMA hardcore fan base, the MMA betting community as well, that really likes the guy because he's fun. He's personable, right? He's kind of got like a everyman type of vibe to him. And he's just a guy that's gone out there and put on a ton of fun fights. So you have nothing but respect for a guy like Corey Sandhagen, great fighter, very skilled athlete. But you just look at the difference in their records right now. Obviously, they haven't fought all the same guys, but a guy like Corey Sandhagen, he's 10-3 in the promotion, dropped the ball 3 times. The Petr Yan fight, he got dropped in that fight. He got hurt in that fight. He was a similar priced underdog, and he lost that one. Came up short. I think Petr Yan, his game has been exposed a little bit in the time that intervened since. Obviously, he got the win over Song Yadong, but prior to that, he had been on the wrong end of several pretty one-sided fights even against Murzakanov. I mean, he was almost never in that fight, so to speak. So I think of a fighter like Corey Sandhagen. It's very impressive, but the Song Yadong fight, you brought it up, Clint. It was a very close fight. It was a very difficult fight. He took a lot of damage in that fight. He was able to weather it, come through. The most impressive recent win from him is obviously over Marlon Chito Vera. Disgraceful split decision, made no sense. He clearly won the fight. He dominated the fight. That was a great win by Corey Sandhagen, a very tactical win. The problem there was that he's a very durable guy. Marlon Chito Vera normally relies on hurting people, damaging them, and unfortunately, he was a little bit behind on the striking, so he couldn't catch him and he couldn't hurt him. Tough guy to beat, right? And Corey just danced circles around him in that fight. But Marlon Chito Vera is not a proactive wrestler and grappler. I think Umar is one of the most proactive wrestlers and grapplers in the division. Like, outside of a guy like Murzakanov, he's a guy that you think most of, hey, this guy's going to go out there. He's not going to go out there and mess around. He's going to go out there and pursue it on the ground. When he got clipped on the feet, what's the first reaction he has? He's like, oh, I should get this back to the ground as quickly as possible. I should try and get on top of this guy. And I agree with you, Clint. Beksat's a problem. I think Beksat, I expected him to not hold up as well as he did in the grappling. So that's the one fear I have with a Umar ITD type scenario is, hey, maybe if somebody's really defensively responsible with their hand placement, they could just ride out these rounds. He'll be in his first 5-round opportunity in the UFC. He might look to just ride out some good positions, say, hey, let me be conservative here. We've seen people body triangle Corey Sandhagen before. We've seen people get to the rear waist cinch and ride out time. Think of TJ Dillashaw pushing him into the fence, controlling him. Even when he wasn't getting the takedowns, guys, he spent a lot of time in negative neutral control positions. I think we've seen over time, Corey Sandhagen, smart fighter, smart guy, will look to adapt, will look to improve. He's a guy that consistently adds elements to his game. But I also think he's a guy that is not very physical, guys. And he used to have a real big problem with not starting fights with intensity. Okay, so we used to see Aljamain Sterling beat him purely on intensity. You go back and watch that fight. One guy is sitting there like, doing my laundry, what should I do? Get some eggs, some milk, like Dana White used to say, right? Doing his grocery list. Meanwhile, Aljamain Sterling's like pacing the cage, like, as soon as they let me out of here, I'm going to grab the hold of this guy. And Aljo at the time was as motivated as somebody could be, wanted to prove I am the guy who deserves next for the title shot. And by the way, guys, it wasn't competitive. Not at all. He just easily took him down, dominated him from the back, never let Corey get off on one single strike, I don't think, and finished the fight. And when you look at that fight and you juxtapose it with this opportunity, I think Umar's going to see that and say, I could do that to this guy. I think he's going to look at the fact that Yuri Alcantara had his arm every which way, but it exploded. And he's going to say, I could probably do that to this guy if I get to these top positions, if I can be dominant. So I do think if this turns into a striking fight, we've seen Umar Nurmagomedov said, man, he's immortal. He can get hit in the head and knocked out, right? He's just a human being, but he's a very skilled human being. He's a very talented human being with a lot of fighting skills under his belt, trains with the right people, surrounds himself with the right people, right game planners. How did that work out last weekend, right? The Khabib game plan that was roundly mocked in the lead up to the fight turns out to be the right one for the opponent for the time. And I think it's a good fight. It's a good scrap. I like Corey and I respect him, but I don't think he's getting his hand raised on Saturday. At least not at this current point. So I'm going to do more research, but I think it's a fight where I respect Corey. I think the styles match up, unfortunately, for him here.
Yeah, and Liam, on top of that, I think there's a very real reason that this fight came together and the UFC it kind of fell apart, but instead of giving Corey Sandhagen a title shot, let's run that one back. Let's rebook that one, guys. Like, Corey Sandhagen arguably had the strongest claim to a title shot in the division. And instead of just giving that to him, they said, you know what, though? I think you got to get by Umar first. And they're rebooking this for a reason, guys. It's not to make Corey look good. It's to make everyone realize that Umar is the king of this weight class and he is coming. He's going to open a lot of eyes on Saturday. I expect it's going to be inside the distance. 25 minutes favors my guy Umar. Eventually he will find himself to a dominant position. And I think he's going to finish Corey Sandhagen on Saturday. We might have a extremely rare situation here, Liam, where this is a generational wealth type of opportunity. Guys, I've got a max bet on Umar on Saturday. I'm heavily considering anchor betting him. And if you guys have not heard of the anchor, it's a new thing I'm doing, guys, where I feel like it comes around very rarely, but there's one person on the card that ain't losing. Numbers aside, that person ain't losing. It was Nate Manis the last time around, Liam. I've done it 3 times now with the anchor, and all 3 of them have come through me. And I use them to make better lines on everybody else on the card. I literally take this person and I parlay them with every single other person on the card that I like. Dog favorite, doesn't matter. And when the anchor wins, all my other bets pay better because the free square was, in fact, the free square. And again, I've only done it 3 times. I might actually make Umar Nurmagomedov an anchor this week, on top of already having him parlayed as a max bet. And guys, that would be probably the biggest bet I've ever made besides the shenanigans Jamal Hill bet that I put up for everybody on Bet Openly. Like, it would be the single most investment that I've had in a single fighter going into a fight, period, as far as units and equity is concerned. And I'm highly considering it in this spot, Liam. I really am, because I do believe that Umar is the future of this weight class, and I think that his time is now. So if you guys are looking for a parlay leg, I've had a lot of questions this week. People that missed the tweet from, way back when I did Peyton Talbot and Umar, they want to parlay Umar with me, and they're looking for parlay legs. We've talked about a couple of other guys or people on the show that I think would be appropriate in that situation already. I think Dumas is probably an okay leg. I think dogs are barking on this card more often than favorites, frankly. As at Murzakanov, probably, because I thought Menifield might be live. That means he's a parlay leg. Godziev, you don't want to necessarily lay it, but he's probably going to win that fight. And then same thing with Shara Bullet. He's probably a decent enough parlay leg because I do think he wins. But that's kind of the thought process there. I do love that somebody is fan enough of the show to make a Clint's dog handle and come in and say, letting me know that the ball is empty. Thank you so much for that, Clint's dog. I love it. That's some good shit right there. And then we have what appears to be a first-time commenter here saying the guy with the glasses jack off Shara Bullet. No, and see, that's where you're wrong, though. You've got that backwards. Shara jacked me off, and that's why his eyes fucked up. Thank you guys for showing up for the podcast this evening. Liam Picks Fights, my co-host for the night. Thank you for spending 2.5 hours breaking down UFC Abu Dhabi with me. My friend, the floor is yours. Tell the people where they can support you, find your content, and anything that you've got coming up in the near future.
I appreciate you, my brother. It's been a fun one. I had a blast. Like I said, it's good to get the work done a little bit early in the week. If you guys are looking for all the work I do, I've been on a rough run. Lord willing, and knock on wood, that means we're about to, go on a big run in the positive direction. Still, I've been up on the year, up over 10% ROI as well. So we've been doing well, but a couple of weeks where it hasn't been our standard, right? We like to keep a very high standard. Hasn't been living up to that. So I'm excited to get it back in blood this week. Let's do it. Over on Patreon at Liam Picks Fights, over on YouTube at Liam Picks Fights. Find me everywhere. And on Twitter and X, I'm dropping just free nuggets all throughout the week. Try and help people talk about trends, talk about things like that, how people have done matchmaking, all that kind of stuff. If you like MMA, you'll like what I have to say, I believe. And if you don't, go ahead and reply to me. I'm willing to engage in the conversation as well. So thank you guys very much, and God bless you all. Good luck on all your bets. Tail fade or indifferent, I hope you learned something.
That's what's up. And you guys, by the way, Liam is probably one of the most underrated follows on Twitter. He's always posting fun gifs and stats and facts and things like that. Very, very entertaining on Twitter, by the way, Liam. You've stepped it up recently in just like the last 9 months, I've noticed, and it's really been fantastic. So congrats on that. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Again, subscribe, please, if you haven't. Home of Fight is taking off to the freaking moon, guys. Home of Fight picks, all platforms. Join the Discord. Come hang out with a bunch of fight fans. Join the Telegram. You want to be on this train. We're taking off from here, guys. But we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We're doing this thing every single Monday right here. And then, of course, I will have the total takedown for you on Thursday, the undefeated post-weigh-in show, where I need to make a new tinfoil cap because I broke this one with how many times I used it. Got to put a new one together for this week's show. We'll see you on Friday for the wrap-up, of course, after the weigh-ins. And, hey, you guys just out there, be good to each other. I'm feeling good, coming off a win. It's been a long time coming. Finally got on track, and hopefully we are going to keep that going the right direction, but we're not going to do that without a positive mentality. So you guys, no matter what you're dealing with, no matter what you're facing, I know sometimes it sucks. Put a smile on your face, strap up your boots, get your ass back out there, and keep trying. That's all we can do. Thank you guys for being here, and have a great day. Let's roll.